Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna start a new series, What If Naruto and Hinata Were Love Rivals Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Naruto, who had spent the last hour and 30 minutes running for his life, was panting as he ran through the streets of Konoha. A mob had gathered after he had played a practical joke on a shopkeeper after being ejected from the shopkeeper's clothes store the previous day. Naruto had spent many nights wandering the streets of Konoha, which had allowed him to lose the mob a few times. However, Naruto had to use every tactic in an attempt to get away from the angry, blinded mob after a few chunin chose to join in the fun. Just as he heard the rumble of more than 40 pairs of feet hurrying past his hiding place, Naruto managed to locate a place to hide. He was currently in a pigeon coop on the roof of one of the numerous apartment buildings in the ninja village. Naruto, who was only 5 years old, fit the dilapidated co-op perfectly, but most people would find it uncomfortable. Since the door's lock was broken and the roof had multiple holes that allowed water to collect on the floor in rust-caked buckets, it was obvious that the pigeon coop had been left unattended. Naruto made the decision to consider other places he could hide from the mob after realizing he was not in any immediate danger. Unfortunately, Ichiraku's and the Hokage monument were the only locations that came to mind for Naruto. These locations were bad because if he hid at Ichiraku's, the mob might find him and harm Ayame-chan and Old Man Tucci. Naruto refused to put some of the few individuals who showed him respect in danger of suffering the same kind of harm that he had. The Hokage monument was the only thing left, but finding him would require slinking across the village with ninja who could easily defeat a small band of bandits. Before Naruto could think of any other options, he heard, "Fireball Jutsu," being yelled outside his makeshift shelter. Behaving swiftly, Naruto rushed through the shed's door and raced as fast as his legs would allow him to the Hokage monument. Naruto had the speed of a mid-level genin because, since he was 4 years old, he had been escaping from irate mobs of civilians every week, and occasionally from mobs of ninjas. Naruto ignored the kunai and shuriken that were being thrown to disable him because he had only one thought. Naruto regrettably didn't notice until the last minute that one of those kunai had an explosion tag on it because of this focus. Naruto raised his arms in front of himself in an attempt to defend himself. Only in Naruto's dreams did the explosion send him into the neighborhood park where the other kids played with their pals. Naruto was rendered unconscious after colliding with a tree near a park walkway. 5-year-old Hinata Hyuga sat on a bench in the park with her mother, who was holding Hinata's younger sister, Hanabi, in her arms. Her mother, Hitomi Hyuga, the wife of Hyuga patriarch Hishi Hyuga, said, "Hinata, why don't you go play with the other kids? I'm sure they'd love to play with you. What if I am make an mistake and they laugh at me?" said Hinata. Hitomi told her daughter, "Well, you'll never know if you never try, Hinata." After hearing her mother's words, Hinata became brave and began to shuffle to the other girls, but after a while, she lost her confidence and ran back to her mother, clinging to her legs. Hitomi had hoped that Hinata would open up more around other children her age, but it only seemed to make her lack of confidence worse. Seeing that sitting on the bench wouldn't help, Hitomi decided that the three would benefit from a change of scenery, even though Hanabi was sleeping in her mother's arms after an hour of screaming and crying at the compound. The screaming stopped only when Hitomi or Hinata held Hanabi. After making sure Hanabi was securely in the sash that had been used to help carry the child, Hitomi got up from the bench and took Hinata's hand before beginning to walk around the park in the hopes that a little exercise would help to calm her nerves. When Hinata's mother entered the room, she demanded respect and people gave it, and even the elders had to admit that she was an intimidating woman. Hinata reprimanded herself for not being more confident and for not playing with the other children, even though the blonde and pink-haired girls looked lovely. Hinata found that holding her mother's hand was comforting, as if she knew that no matter what happened, her mother would be able to help her get through it together. After walking in silence for a few minutes, Hinata heard some shouting coming from outside the park. She turned to her mother and asked, "Mother, what are those people shouting about?" A cool breeze blew past, and the trees provided shade on hot summer days. Hitomi was about to reply when a blonde blur appeared in front of them, followed by an explosion, and he saw a small blonde boy with whiskers on his face at the base of a tree. Hitomi's maternal instincts kicked in and she hurried to the little boy, much to Hanabi's discomfiture, when she noticed a trickle of blood running down his head and knew that he needed medical attention quickly. After giving Hanabi to Hinata, Hitomi picked up the boy and called for the guards who had been following them a few yards back, and 3 battle-ready Hyugas appeared in a matter of seconds. After telling one of the guards to take Hinata home, Hitomi led the other 2 to the hospital. The Chunin who had been hunting Naruto decided to give up after seeing the Hyuga clan head's wife and daughter with the boy, but they didn't make it far on their way home before two Anbu showed up and killed the two Chunin on the spot, adhering to the Anbu code of nothing left behind, and cleaning up the blood and bodies to the point where not even an Inuzuka could tell there had been a killing there. Hitomi used her rusted ninja skills and left across building roofs to the hospital, with her two guards following her to ensure no one got in the way. When Hitomi arrived at the hospital, she told a nurse that the boy in her arms needed to be treated right away, and after much hesitating, Naruto was led into a room. A doctor arrived soon after, hoping to wrap things up quickly because no one wanted to spend a lot of time with the demon child, but after looking over his body, he discovered that the boy had serious injuries to his heart, lungs, and skull. The doctor decided that healing the child would be preferable to confronting the Hyuga clan head's wife, so he worked to heal the boy's wounds. After a half hour of exhausting work, the doctor left and told Hitomi that the boy would be fine with a little rest. Entering the room, Hitomi looked at the poor child and recognized him as the so-called demon brat from his unusually yellow hair and the fox-like whiskers on his cheeks. Knowing of his burden because her husband was a clan head, Hitomi knew that this little boy in front of her was not the Kyuubi, but rather its jailer, and seeing him in such a state made the Hyuga mother's heart ache. Since there was nothing else she could do, she decided it was time to go home and change out of her robes, which now had blood on them. Telling one of the guards to watch over the room, Hitomi thought about how she could help this little boy. What happened? I was running across a rooftop and then an explosion tag went off. Wait, is this death? Why does it hurt so much? Naruto began to wake up and looked around, asking himself, a hospital. When did I get here? Unaware of how or when he got there, he chose to wait and ask one of the nurses. In an attempt to kill time, he began to consider when the next sale at the grocery store he frequents will be. Fortunately, the owners didn't care that he was the demon brat. All they saw was another customer purchasing from their tiny, unremarkable business that had fewer than 5 regular customers. The following day the work of a Hokage was not for an 82-year-old man like Hiruzen Sarutobi, who is running on fumes and has the energy to complete paperwork. His Anbu told him yesterday that Naruto was in the hospital and that he was now down 2 Chunin. When the old Hokage considered the boy's life, he became depressed because, as the head of his clan and the Hokage, he was unable to take him in because of political issues. The Inuzuka and Akamichi clans also offered to take the boy in, but the village elders contended that doing so would give the clan that took him a lot of political power because the Jinchuriki Konoha was loyal to them. If only they would look at him as a person and not a source of power. The boy's life would be so much better, the exhausted Hokage thought. Hiruzen decided that he had earned a break and decided to visit the hospital to check on Naruto. Many of the villagers, both civilian and shinobi, waved and cheerfully greeted the man who was known as the professor, as he walked through the streets. Hiruzen took great pride in this title, not only because of his extensive knowledge of the shinobi world, but also because he had educated the greatest team Konoha had ever seen, the legendary Sannin, 3 of the most powerful shinobi ever produced by Konoha. Regretfully, all of his students had left the village for various reasons. I'm here to make sure a little boy I brought here yesterday is okay, Hitomi said, raising his eyebrows in surprise. Would this little boy have yellow hair and whiskers? Hiruzen asked, curious about who she was visiting as he had not heard of any Hyuga recently being admitted to the hospital. The old Hokage saw Hitomi Hyuga approaching the hospital as well. You are familiar with him, Hokage-sama? The old Hokage laughed and said, yes, I know him, in response to the inquisitive Hyuga mother. Since he is an orphan, he doesn't have many friends. Therefore, I've made it my mission to be someone he can rely on, the Hokage replied. The two went into the hospital without asking any more questions and made their way to Naruto's room when they heard yelling coming from down the hallway. What do you mean I can't leave? Look, kid, I'd be happy to let you go if it weren't for that Hyuga outside, but I can't, so lie down and keep quiet until I give the all clear. With that, a frustrated nurse hurried out of the room, thanking Kami that the yelling had stopped while the Hyuga guard stood outside. Hitomi became even more interested in the boy after Hiruzen and Hitomi paused to listen to the conversation when they first noticed the yelling. Hiruzen was sweating because of the boy's lack of patience, which he compared to that of a grandson. Hiruzen was welcomed into the room with a joyful, Gigi-san, and a tight hug to his legs. Chuckling, the Hokage bent down to hug Naruto back, only realizing after the hug that he couldn't get back up without his cane which he had left by the door. Seeing the Hokage's dilemma, Hitomi offered a hand to the Hokage that was much appreciated by the tiring old man. Taking notice of the stranger who had come with the Hokage, Naruto asked, who is she? cautiously making his way back to his bed while maintaining eye contact with the stranger. "My name is Hitomi Hyuga," she said, realizing she still didn't know the boy's name, and decided that after introductions and explaining how she brought him here would be a better time to ask how he ended up like he was when she found him. "What is your name?" she asked. Naruto responded, "My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and I'm going to be the next Hokage, believe it." After becoming somewhat calmed down after being taken aback by the woman's kindness, Hiruzen smiled at the young boy's declaration of being named Hokage because he could see how fervently they were about something. Hitomi chose to delve deeper into the topic of, "So is there reason why you want to be Hokage?" Because she also thought the declaration was charming. Immediately responding, Naruto said, "I'm going to be Hokage because everyone in the village has to respect the Hokage because the Hokage is the strongest ninja in the village, ya know." "Do you know why the Hokage is the strongest in the village?" asked Hitomi, who grinned at this but chose to try to help the boy along his journey to become Hokage. Naruto shook his head in confusion, unsure of what Hyuga-sama was trying to say. "The Hokage is the strongest because they protect the whole village. It's because they have so many people to protect that they are strong," Hitomi replied. In an attempt to comprehend the Hyuga's wisdom, Naruto appeared to be lost in thought. After 3 hours to Naruto's dismay, Hitomi announced that she had to leave because it was getting late. She was smart and reassuring, and he liked her. She had been the closest thing he had to a mother figure in 3 hours during his 5 wretched years of existence. He was appreciative that she had taken him to the hospital. When she told him that she did, he was actually taken aback. Never before had a stranger treated him so kindly. The old Hokage was taken aback by something Naruto did as she was leaving, so he bowed to Hitomi and thanked her for her actions. He had never witnessed Naruto treat anyone with such deference. Not even he had received it. "I enjoyed talking with you, Naruto. I'm glad that you're well. I hope to see you again," Hitomi said with a smile as she bid Naruto farewell. Hitomi recalled how Naruto had described how he had been fleeing a mob and how an explosion had thrown him into the tree she had discovered him beneath as she and her 2 guards left the hospital. She also considered the boy's apparent lack of friends. Hitomi frowned and made the decision to try to persuade Hinata to try to become friends with him. She was aware that her husband would be worried, but she didn't mind. Despite being the clan head, he was helpless to stop her. Since it was a quicker and more pleasant way to return to the compound, Hitomi and her guards crossed the park on their way home. As the sun began to set, families would typically begin making their way home for dinner. But when Hitomi turned to look around again, no one was there. The park was empty except for her and her guards. At that moment, she became aware that the birds that typically sang in the trees along her path had stopped singing. Hitomi walked through the park, indicating to her guards to be careful. A masked ninja attacked one of her guards around the halfway point. All 3 Hyugas went to activate their Byakugan, preparing for battle. Before they could do so, kunai and shuriken struck the other guard. With her Byakugan activated, Hitomi could see almost everything around her. Sadly, she didn't see anything amiable. She was attacked by 2 more ninja, one of whom joined the first to knock down her defenses. Hitomi defeated the ninja who attacked her, despite the fact that she hadn't gone on a mission in almost 7 years. Although Hitomi disliked violence, she put a lot of effort into her Chunin training and considered testing for the Jonin rank. However, she decided to put her love before her ninja career and never looked back. Unfortunately, she was attacked by the other 2 ninja after they had completed her final guard. Hitomi assumed the Juken fighting stance and braced herself for battle, knowing she would not be able to flee. Hitomi was forced to defend herself by dodging and rerouting the numerous punches, kicks, and kunai that were hurled at her because she was only one person. After a while, one of her enemies created a gap, which Hitomi took advantage of to strike enough chakra points to render them unconscious. But this assault also exposed her to the other adversary's attack. The final assassin moved quickly and hurled a kunai at Hitomi. Hitomi made a move to avoid the kunai, but she ultimately fell into her opponent's trap. As another assassin emerged from hiding, she felt a searing pain in her heart and back. Hitomi felt the blood trickle down her chin after coughing it up. Hitomi fell to the ground after her killer removed the kunai from her heart. Hitomi whirled as she fell in an attempt to catch a glimpse of her killer's face. There was no mistaking the eyes she saw staring back at her, even though the face was hidden by a mask to conceal the identity. How could anyone misidentify a Hyuga's pupilless, purple eyes? Hinata was shattered. Her mother had always been there to support her through her difficulties. Now, if she had issues, who could she turn to? When Hinata learned of her mother's murder, she felt more alone than she had ever felt before. The young girl's mind was racing with ideas. To whom can I turn for guidance? What will Dad think of this? Will I be held to higher standards by the elders? When Hinata understood that Hanabi won't have any memories of mother, all of her concerns ceased. At just a few months of age, Hanabi had not yet begun to walk. Hinata sobbed as she curled up on her bed at this thought. Not just for her, but also for her sister and father. At the news, Haishi remained emotionless. Because some of the elders had been there, he couldn't, actually. Haishi suppressed his feelings until he had gone back to his study because he had to maintain appearances. Haishi let the tears roll down his cheeks, making sure he was by himself. Tears he hadn't shed since his mother died when he was 7 years old. Sky WHEMPT as the 3 Hyuga members' coffins traveled to the cemetery. The elders and immediate family members of the deceased attended the funeral. Instead of screaming the entire time, Hanabi sobbed as she realized her mother was dying. Although that FA section aide would crumble once he was in the safety of his own office, Haishi was able to control his emotions and maintained a neutral expression throughout the funeral. Hinata said nothing. A steady stream of tears ran down her cheeks. She was still in shock over her mother's passing. Hinata detested the sense of sadness she experienced as she watched her mother's coffin being buried. With tears in her arms, Hinata gazed down at Hanabi. Hinata wished to never experience such sadness again. Hinata made the decision to stop forming relationships with other people after that day. Bonds were simply things that, if they broke, would cause you pain. As Haishi watched the love of his life being lowered into the earth, his thoughts changed. His only remaining family members were his brother, nephew, and daughters. On paper, his father was the only one with that title. Only when teaching Jukin, attending events, and putting the caged bird seal on his brother and nephew did his father spend time with him and his brother. Haishi stepped up security at the Hyuga compound because he didn't want to see anyone else in a coffin. When the Cloud Ninja attempted to kidnap Hinata 3 months later, it turned out to be a wise choice. Fortunately, they were able to apprehend the criminals without killing them. As a result, Hizashi was spared, and Neji never developed a growing animosity toward the main family. Following the funeral introspective, Naruto strolled through Konoha's streets. He went to ask the Hokage because he was intrigued by the large number of people walking through the village with eyes like Hitomi-sama's. Fortunately, the Hokage's work was not interrupted because he had been taking a break. The Hokage faltered a little when he was questioned about the group of people who had eyes like Hitomi-sama. The old Hokage was saddened by Naruto's response as he explained what had happened. Naruto had been able to feel something he had always desired, even though he hadn't known Hitomi for very long. The emotion of a caring mother. Naruto didn't even notice the glares he was getting from people as he went down the street. In any case, he didn't care. The death of Hitomi-sama hurt more than the glares he had been subjected to on the street for the past 1.5 years, not that they didn't hurt. When Naruto saw the Hyugas leaving the cemetery, he made the decision to visit Hitomi-sama himself. When he discovered her grave, he was struck by how ornate it was and how many flowers were there. In the 3 hours she spent speaking with him at the hospital, she had made it to the list of people Naruto considered valuable. He decided to get flowers for her as well because he felt he should thank her for being so kind to him. He requested 3 flowers that meant, to remember someone who died, from a nearby flower shop. Every hour, 1 flower. Fortunately, he had happened upon one of the numerous Yamanaka flower shops that can be found in the Konoha area. They were able to distinguish between jailer and jailed, even though the clan had lost a lot of members in the Kyuubi attack. However, that did not imply that they were interested in doing business with the demon child. Continuing to live up to their name, Naruto received a stunning trio of gladiolus flowers from the people behind the counter. Naruto thanked them and hurried out the door after paying for the flowers. When Naruto reached the grave, he placed the 3 flowers next to Hitomi's name and gazed at it. Naruto, who was constantly tormented by the village, vowed not to cry since it was ineffective. However, he was unable to control his tears as he stood in front of Hitomi's grave. Time jump. They began the academy 2 years later. When Hinata and her 2 guards arrived at the academy, she bowed to each of them and thanked them for their efforts before heading off to locate her classroom. Hinata observed several kids, ranging in age from 7 to 13, conversing with one another as she moved through the hallways. These peasants are so naive and talk about so freely. How can Neji-ni-san tolerate such individuals? All over the heiress. After locating her classroom, she went inside and saw that all of the heirs and clan heiresses from Konoha's major clans were present. She walked to the back of the classroom and took a seat in the upper left corner, not wanting to get sucked into the conversation. Since he would be beginning the Ninja Academy today, Naruto was overjoyed. He would be beginning his journey to become Hokage. He heard the whispers, "What's the demon doing here?" And, "They're letting that monster become a ninja?" As he walked onto the academy grounds and saw the looks he was getting from parents. Even though he had grown numb to remarks like these over the years, they still caused him some pain. He grinned even more and headed to his classroom, not wanting to show that they had affected him. He had mistakenly entered a class of 12 and 13-year-olds on the way there, believing it to be his classroom. They hurled several pencils at him before he could say sorry, which he easily avoided and which ultimately lodged themselves in the door frame. Naruto continued, but more quickly, so as not to stir up any more trouble. Naruto rushed into class as the final bell rang. "Yes. Just made it," Naruto exclaimed. Some of his classmates started to perspire while the majority of them ignored him. Hinata didn't give it much thought because she knew he was the village misfit and always causing trouble, even though she recognized him but couldn't recall where. She made the decision that it would be best to stay away from him and did her best to ignore him. Naruto glanced at his classmates as he searched for a seat. Numerous seats were already being occupied. Naruto sat down beside a boy with jet black hair that made him think of a goose's butt after spotting one in one of the middle rows. Naruto attempted to strike up a conversation with his new deskmate since he had no one else to talk to. The boy turned to face Naruto and smiled slightly as he said, "Hello, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, ya know. What's your name?" "My name is Sasuke Uchiha, son of the Uchiha clan head." Naruto said, "What? Your dad is the clan head? That's so cool. Who are your parents?" inquired Sasuke. "I don't have any," Naruto said calmly after making a brief grimace. The Uchiha boy was caught off guard by this. The idea of living without parents had never occurred to him. Sasuke apologized in the hopes of preserving a potential friendship, but Naruto reassured him, saying, "It's okay." "Do you like ramen?" Naruto asked, breaking the awkward silence that had begun between the two. Sasuke happily followed the change in conversation, happy to break the silence that had started between them. "I like ramen, it's okay, though I like dango better." Nothing was better to Naruto than ramen, so he thought this was terrible, but he wasn't going to let his passion for ramen get in the way of his potential friendship. After Naruto said, "I don't know about that, though I don't know what dango is," Sasuke was the next to express his dismay. He could never have imagined not knowing dango. "How about after school you and I go to my favorite dango shop?" replied Sasuke. Naruto was ecstatic to have found a friend and embraced right away. A few minutes after the last bell, Iruka came into the classroom. Wishing to extend the students' socializing time. As a new school year began, his colleague Mizuki sighed. Iruka was pleased to see that the majority of his students were laughing and chatting with both old and new acquaintances when he walked into the room. But when he saw the lonesome Hyuga in the corner, this joy was interrupted. Iruka chose to begin class even though he knew it was not his place to attempt to address that directly. "Hello boys and girls. My name is Iruka-sensei and this is my co-teacher Mizuki-sensei. We look forward to teaching you and watching you grow into the next generation of Konoha. Now, we're going to go around the room and introduce ourselves. Say your name and something you like." The names of Naruto's classmates were called out, one by one, beginning in the lower right corner and progressing across and then upward. The slaziest boy Naruto had ever seen said, "My name is Shikamaru Nara, and I like cloud watching." The fattest child he had ever seen said, "My name is Choji Akamichi, and I like barbecue." At this remark, everyone's perspiration stopped. It was Sasuke's turn after a few more introductions from two girls, Sakura and Ino, and children from civilian families. Iruka grinned as she said, "My name is Sasuke Uchiha, and I enjoy hanging out with my big brother." Itachi Uchiha was an exception to the rule that most Uchihas were too arrogant and snobbish, so spending time with him could indicate that Sasuke avoided the fate that befell the rest of his clan. Naruto, trembling with excitement, came next. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki, believe it. I'm going to be Hokage," he exclaimed. Naruto was so loud that Iruka and the others had covered their ears. Iruka then recognized the name and recalled that Naruto was the nine-tailed fox's Jinchuriki. It wasn't difficult to connect the dots, even though Iruka wasn't a Jonin and didn't have the official privilege to know that. Despite his intense animosity toward the fox, Iruka felt sorry for Naruto because he was the main casualty of that attack. Despite not displaying his anger outwardly, Mizuki's mind was racing. "Not only am I forced to teach these whiny little brats instead of going on missions, I have to teach the demon brat," he said. "How could the academy allow it to enter? The class proceeded to the final individual for introductions. Hinata stated icily, "My name is Hinata Hyuga and I like flower pressing." When the young Hyuga was introduced, the room fell silent. In an attempt to distract the class from the icy Hyuga, Iruka explained the fundamentals of classroom behavior, including, "Don't talk when the teacher is talking, keep your hands to yourself unless we're sparring," and similar directives. Naruto became incredibly bored with this and began to fall asleep as a result. Sasuke woke up his new friend by giving him an elbow to the ribs after observing him struggling to fall asleep. Naruto glared at the Uchiha, who had just become very interested in Iruka's speech, in response to Sasuke's elbow. Naruto looked back at Iruka-sensei, not wanting to start a fight. "We're going to begin with the founding of Konoha today," Iruka said, catching Naruto's attention. "Naruto," she said, "you know to be Hokage means you have to know about the history of the village and the world. That way you can learn from your successors and not make the same mistake they made." Naruto let his head fall into the desk at this point, wondering how he was going to become Hokage when all he did at school was learn history. This is significant information. If you had no idea how the village came to be, what sort of Hokage would you be? He's right. What kind of Hokage wouldn't know how the village was started? That's like a parent who didn't know where their child came from, Naruto thought, and with this newfound drive, he decided he should take Iruka-sensei's lesson to heart instead of brushing it off. Mizuki stood to the side, furious that Iruka would support the demon brat in his quest to become Hokage, while Iruka grinned and carried on with his lesson after noticing the resolve in Naruto's eyes. The school day went on with numerous interruptions to Iruka's class because of bathroom breaks or waking up people who had fallen asleep. Naruto had actually been woken up 3 times by Iruka's lecture, but he would apologize afterward. "You lecturers are just so boring, Iruka-sensei, no offense," was what Naruto said after being woken up for the 3rd time, and Iruka sighed at this remark. Although he was aware that his lectures weren't the most engaging, it was a blow to his pride to be called out as such. Finally lunch came and everyone was let outside to eat and play until they had to go back to get ready for the entrance ceremony. Sasuke and Naruto had decided to take a spot under the tree with a swing. Naruto had brought a to-go ramen from Ichiraku's and Sasuke had rice balls with little octopus sausages. I don't know what they're actually called. All the while they chatted away, talking about what they like, what they dislike, and what Sasuke's clan was like. Naruto thought it was awesome that Sasuke had such a big family. As they talked, they also realized they both love training. For Naruto, that being physical training and some target practice with the few kunai he had, and for Sasuke being training with his brother and father on target practice and taijutsu. Naruto asked if Sasuke could teach him that taijutsu the Uchiha use. Sasuke shook his head at this, saying, "Our taijutsu is meant to work with our Sharingan, so it wouldn't work for you. You need to find your own taijutsu style that works with your personality and physical abilities." Naruto wasn't disappointed he couldn't learn a taijutsu style, but I understood why. "Oh well, guess I just need to find another one that's even better than the Uchiha's style, believe it." Because she didn't want to be drawn into any of her classmates' conversations, Hinata sat at a small table in the corner of the yard and ate in silence while watching her classmates converse. As her gaze moved across the yard, it fell on a boy who had bright yellow hair and whiskers on his cheeks. She couldn't recall the last time she had seen the boy, and since she didn't have much else to do, she thought about it all lunch and left the yard without being able to recall where she had seen him. As the children lined up on the stage, a group of parents sat in front of them, and many of Naruto's classmates waved and smiled at their parents and relatives as they waited for the Hokage to arrive and deliver his speech. Although the children had already had their first day of school, this marked them as future Konoha shinobi. While he never displayed anything but a smile on the outside, Naruto secretly wept for his parents as he watched this and pondered, "Will my parents be this happy for me?" No one, not even her own father, who had become concerned about Hinata's change in personality after her mother's death, could tell what was going through her blank face that stared out into the crowd. Hinata's mask of neutrality would only break into a smile when she was playing with her sister or tears when she was in her room and didn't think anyone could hear. Heishi wished she could make a friend or two, but he had his days full of clan business and couldn't try arranging for her to interact with one of the other clan's children. Despite the fact that she had begun training in Juken and had shown herself to be a prodigy, the elders were waiting for her to mature so that she could truly train in the fighting style. Hanabi was thrilled to see her sister on stage, and although most people saw Hinata as cold and distant, she was fortunate to see the kind and playful side of the Hyuga heiress. Entering the schoolyard, Hiruzen walked slowly to the podium, grinning as he passed by several clan heads who bowed their heads to him. He noted that the new class had many students who looked promising, but what he was most pleased about was that Naruto had appeared to have made a friend in a young Uchiha boy. Turning back to the parents, Hiruzen began his speech, which he had used for many of the graduation ceremonies he had attended, with the words, "Hello parents of Konoha, I find great joy in welcoming your children into Konoha's Ninja Academy." He received a brief round of applause. A life of adventure, wonder, and horror. The crowd erupted in cheers and loud applause as the old Hokage bowed at the podium and walked back to his office. The children ran to their parents and gave them big hugs as their parents discussed special treats in honor of such a significant milestone in their lives. "Here, we will train them to be ready for the challenges they face and hope to see them grow into fantastic shinobi that will inspire those of the future." Seeing everyone rush to their families, Naruto stood on the stage, his smile softening as he realized how alone he felt. Since there was no more school today, he made the decision to go to his apartment, putting Sasuke's promise out of his mind. But just as he was ready to leave the schoolyard, he heard, "Hey Naruto, I thought we were going to get some dango." Naruto smiled and turned around to face Sasuke and his brother Itachi. "You bet?" Sasuke ran up to Naruto, and they began to walk off to Sasuke's favorite dango shop. Itachi had watched the exchange with interest, and although he was aware of what Naruto was, he was perplexed as to how someone could mistake such a gentle, innocent boy for the Kyuubi. When he realized the two boys were going to leave without him, he broke out of his reverie and went to catch up with them. When Sasuke revealed that Itachi was a member of Anbu, Naruto looked at Itachi with wide eyes and asked him about all the secrets he knew because of his membership in Anbu. Itachi smiled and said he couldn't tell them because it's an A-class secret, but he did tell the two boys that on one mission he had to pretend to be a clown in a traveling circus. Naruto and Sasuke laughed at this, trying to imagine him wearing large shoes, applying makeup, and sporting a large red nose. After 9 months, the last day of classes before winter break was November 23rd, which was an exciting day for the Ninja Academy students. I called it winter break because I don't remember Konoha having winter classes. Sasuke was very excited because he and his family were going to some nearby mountains to go sledding. Naruto was happy for his friend, even though he would miss him. Naruto and Sasuke had become best friends over the past 9 months, and Naruto had never been happier. He had tried dango and had finally tasted a home-cooked meal, and he was glad that he no longer had to flee as many mobs. Additionally, because he was in the academy, there were a lot fewer ninja when they joined a mob. In the 9 months that they had been attending the academy, a lot had happened. Sasuke had developed a small fan club, the two had made friends with Shikamaru and Choji, as well as a boy named Kiba and Shino. Shisui Uchiha, who was Itachi's best friend and a genius due to his unmatched skill with the Sharingan, had vanished, and many had suspected Itachi because he was the only other Uchiha in the clan capable of defeating Shisui. They had also discovered that Iruka-sensei was actually a pervert after catching him reading a magazine that featured numerous half or fully nude women. They had vowed that day to never become perverts themselves and to punish those who had fallen to the perv side of the force. Screaming erupted down the hall as Iruka was wrapping up his speech about how he would see them after the winter and look forward to teaching them again. Iruka halted his speech to look into the noise, and the class fell silent as they tried to figure out what had caused the commotion. After a minute, Iruka returned from his investigation and glared at the class. "Which one of you let frogs loose in Class 1A?" Iruka demanded of the class, but even though he was being very serious, there were still giggles coming from all over the place. As Iruka looked around the classroom for a potential culprit, he noticed Naruto, who was trying to contain his laughter by grabbing his side and covering his mouth with one hand. Sasuke was also trying to contain his laughter, but Iruka knew the boy would never pull such a practical joke. Hinata, who found Naruto's antics incomprehensible and considered them impolite and childish, had watched the entire scene with disgust. "After school today, Naruto, I'd like to see you in my office. Enjoy your winter, everyone, and don't forget to train and study." All but Naruto jumped with delight when Iruka said this. Naruto attempted to use puppy dog eyes on Sasuke to spare him from suffering alone. But Sasuke smirked and told him, "You're on your own with this one." Naruto became deflated at his friend's lack of support and began to plod to Iruka-sensei's office. "Serves you right," Hinata thought as she entered the door and made her way to the school entrance to be escorted home by her 2 guards. Sasuke was so excited to celebrate with his family that he slowed down to catch his breath as he approached the Uchiha district. Although he was the best in the class in terms of endurance, Sasuke began to whistle a little tune to himself as he made his way home, but as he did so, he noticed that no one was outside and that the usual bustle of the Uchiha compound's shopping district was absent. Wondering where everyone was, Sasuke went to a nearby sweet shop run by his uncle and his wife. When he entered, he saw that everything was in disarray. The mouthwatering displays of candy were smashed on the floor, and the innumerable glass jars of candy were shattered on the floor. Sasuke noticed a foot sticking behind the counter and went to investigate. When Sasuke got closer, he smelled something metallic. When he turned the corner of the counter, he saw that his uncle and aunt had been slashed multiple times and were lying in a pool of red blood. After he finished throwing up on the floor, Sasuke shook his head in shock and fled the store, thinking, they must be okay. Nisan and father are at home, they're strong. 5 hours earlier, my dad is at the end of his rope. As Hokage, he worked to protect the village and needed to make sure Itachi understood what he had to do. Itachi, would you do anything to protect his village? Itachi told the Hokage, the Uchiha elders are planning a coup d'état. Hiruzen sighed and stroked his beard, seeking a peaceful solution to any problem, but this situation did not allow for such ideals. As Hokage, I am forced to make difficult decisions and many people are hurt in more ways than one, but they are needed to protect the village. What I am about to ask you is something no one should be asked, but you are the only one who is capable of doing it, Hiruzen said, attempting to soften the blow of what he and the village elders had decided to do as a last resort to stop the Uchiha. I would do anything to protect this village and its people, Itachi retorted. The only solution I and my advisors came up with to deal with this problem is the elimination of the Uchiha clan, Hiruzen said with a heavy heart. He had just asked the boy to kill his family and many of his friends, and Hiruzen knew that Itachi had a secret relationship and that accepting this mission would definitely end it. Itachi was still processing what the Hokage had just said, and only after realizing that killing his family would put her and Sasuke at risk of harm did he decide to carry out the plan. But, I will not kill Sasuke, Itachi said, and Hiruzen smiled. Sasuke is too young to know of such things and there will be no harm in sparing him, but he will grow to hate you, the old Hokage warned. Hiruzen granted Itachi's request and said, you might want to go say goodbye to her before you leave, let her know it was not of your choice. Itachi nodded his head and responded, I know he will hate me, but when he is old enough to understand, please tell him why I did it. Additionally, there is a mercenary organization called the Akatsuki. When you get out of the village and learn as much as you can about their intentions, I want you to join this group. Itachi nodded and departed the Hokage's office, saying, Jiraiya may have an amazing spy network, but even he doesn't know much about them. Hiruzen felt a little deflated and wished someone else would step up to take the role because he was growing too old to handle such mental strain. After arriving at his home, Sasuke hurried inside to search for his family while yelling, Ka-san. Tu-san. Tears streaming down his face, Sasuke called out, Ni-san. Sasuke made his way through the house looking for his family. When he opened the family room door he couldn't move from being in shock at the sight in front of him. His father was laying on the floor in a puddle of blood and his mother was lying on top of him with blood soaking into her clothes from where she had been stabbed. But that's not why Sasuke was in shock. Standing behind the two bodies was the face of the person he thought the world of. To see him standing there with his blooding katana in hand almost made the young Uchiha lose his breakfast too. In front of him stood his elder brother Itachi. Sasuke in anger screamed and charged at Itachi trying to make him pay for what he had done. Itachi, not wanting to endure any more pain, sped to Sasuke and gave him a punch to the stomach to knock him out. As Sasuke fell to the floor he looked up at his brother and saw the tears in his eyes. All he could say before he lost consciousness was, why? With his work done, Itachi left the village before the Hokage would send Anbu and went to find the Akatsuki. As he moved through the forest, he looked back numerous times until he could no longer see the walls of Konoha. He didn't know how long he would have to be away from the place he called home, but he would do everything in his power to ensure that this organization didn't hurt those he loved. Itachi watched his brother fall to the ground and felt like a kunai had been stabbed through his heart when his brother asked why. Naruto gazed at the grave below. Since Hitomi-sama's passing, he had not felt this depressed. Sasuke was at his side. Sasuke went to the funeral because Naruto was now his closest relative. He was concerned about his companion. Sasuke had just uttered the word, HN. Naruto was unsure about what to do. This was the first time he had been in this situation. Naruto hugged his friend, unsure of what else to do. If you ever need anything, I will always be there for you. Just tell me what you need and I will do everything in my power to make it possible, stated Naruto. Sasuke lowered his head and began to tremble. Naruto allowed him to cry for as long as he needed to after he sobbed into his embrace. I must avenge them, I must kill Itachi, was Sasuke's declaration after he was done. while a deep hatred was growing inside of him. After considering the circumstances, Naruto was astounded that Itachi would act in such a way without cause. Naruto claimed, "I don't think Itachi did it without a good reason, in an attempt to deflect Sasuke's animosity." "What do you mean? He killed everyone I loved just so he could prove his strength and then left the village like a coward," said Sasuke. "I may not have known Itachi like you have, but I know he's not the type of person who would do something so terrible just to prove his strength." "Is the Itachi you know someone who would do that?" Naruto attempted to reason with Sasuke after realizing that this reasoning was flawed. Exasperated, Sasuke balled his fists. "No, Itachi wouldn't do something like this to prove his strength," he sighed, letting go of his balled fists. Naruto smiled gently at his friend, happy that he could make him see the light. "So if we want to find out why he did what he did, we're just going to have to get strong enough to make him tell us," Naruto replied. Sasuke laughed at this. "Damn right we are. We're going to make Itachi explain things to us and then we're going to drag him home no matter what." Grinning, Naruto said he would go get some dango. Unable to resist, Sasuke nodded. "I don't know why you did what you did, Itachi, but I will do everything in my power to make sure you tell me why," Sasuke vowed as they left the graves of his parents. The academy's graduation ceremony. The pupils in Naruto's class were standing on a stage once more. They're all much larger now, of course. After the stoic Shino, Sasuke was now the second tallest child in the class. On the other hand, Naruto was the shortest student in the class. Something his friends would frequently make fun of. Despite having other friends, Naruto and Sasuke spent the majority of their time together. They would always be paired against one another in spars, train together, and eat together most nights. Naruto was by far the fastest and smartest of his class, despite technically being at the bottom. Naturally, this was not evident in the written exams. It would seem as though everything he and Sasuke had studied simply disappeared from his mind when it came time for tests. He then defeated Sasuke by knocking him out of the ring during their first sparring session. As a result, Sasuke's fan club and the local school bullies beat him up after school. After deciding that a spar loss was preferable to a beating, Naruto never demonstrated his full potential outside of Sasuke's training sessions. However, Sasuke was the class leader, with Hinata Hyuga coming in second. He was unable to copy abilities because he had not yet unlocked his Sharingan. However, Sasuke didn't care because he believed that copying skills and not trying to learn something were weak and improper. With Kunai and Shuriken, he had surpassed the previous school record for the most bullseyes, which was 86, by 173. Just outside the target's center is where the 174th landed. In addition to being upset that she had lost to the Uchiha, Hinata was even more upset that he had spent so much time with the class idiot. She couldn't figure out how Naruto would pass the tests following the ceremony. He wasn't particularly special in her opinion. After defeating the Uchiha once, he consistently lost with ease. However, it appeared that he had allowed himself to be struck when she had spared against him. "Naruto Uzumaki, you are a mystery, but you will ultimately remain scum who was fortunate enough to be in my class." This ceremony had taken place at the start of the day rather than at its conclusion. The teachers had hoped that spending time with their parents would help ease the anxiety of many of the students. However, Naruto and Sasuke walked to the testing location. Since neither of them had family nearby, they made the decision to stay away from seeing other people being reassured by their mothers and inspired by their fathers. Naruto finally allowed his nerves to get the better of him when he arrived at the testing location. "I can still do a good clone, damn it. Why am I unable to perform basic Bunshin no Jutsu?" When Sasuke had his shoulder, Naruto began to bite his fingernails and kept adding to the list of things he found difficult. "You're going to be fine, don't stress out about it." "You never focus right when you're stressed," Sasuke replied. Sasuke's words helped Naruto relax, and he grinned at the friend he now considered a brother. Naruto yelled, "You're right, we're going to blow this test out of the water." After that, the two entered the classroom and waited for the written exam to begin. Naruto, on the other hand, had forgotten the answers to the majority of the questions and received a final score of 71, while Sasuke had aced the written test and performed flawlessly. Although it was better than the majority of his prior scores, he was still at the bottom. Shikamaru was at the bottom, so forget about that. He claimed the test was too troublesome, and chose to take a nap after answering 13 of the 21 questions, not because he didn't know the answers. Giving him a score of 61, it was time for the jutsu test now that the written exam was finished. Sasuke and Naruto were among the last to leave because the order of departure had been alphabetical. Fangirls surrounded Sasuke because he was unable to leave the classroom. As a result, he tried to shut out all the girls and entered what Naruto referred to as his brooding state. Naruto thought, what the hell, it's the last day, might as well have some fun with it. Naruto then proceeded to his hidden prank box, which he had hidden in the rear of the classroom. Naruto rummaged through his supplies and found many obnoxious objects, including whoopee cushions, rubber chickens, and fake spiders. Then he realized that this was the ideal prank to play on these girls. Naruto picked up a piece of paper, wrote down his plan, folded it up, and gave it to Sasuke as he passed by inconspicuously. Sasuke read the paper, breaking his brooding state. For a moment, he glanced at Naruto, grinning, and nodded slightly. Naruto then proceeded to obtain the final individual required for his scheme. Kiba had just finished his test and was awaiting his results when Naruto approached him. Naruto first attracted the Inuzuka's attention before whispering his strategy into his ear. After listening to Naruto's plan, Kiba had a cunning smile on his face. Kiba enjoyed being the center of attention and was aware of how annoying Sasuke found his fan club. Kiba hanged into Sasuke and headed to the back of the room to wait for things to start. You know it's the last day, and I've been really nervous about this test. I think I need a hug if I'm ever going to calm down, Sasuke said, signaling that everything was ready. 13 fangirls immediately jumped at the Uchiha and gave him a kiss and a hug. Sasuke swiftly used a substitution jutsu with Kiba just before they reached him. The girls didn't know the difference. 13 different pairs of arms were now embracing Kiba, and his arms were being pulled into his chests while blood trickled down his nose. Wearing the henge gave the impression that Sasuke had completely changed his personality and was now a playboy having fun in his own harem. All good things have to end, unfortunately for the Inuzuka. Hinata's observation to the girls that, you do realize that's some else in a henge of Sasuke, ended the hug session. Every girl blinked as they gazed at the Hyuga heiress. As they turned back to Sasuke, they began to see contradictions that would only be apparent to an extreme stalker. After observing the entire event, Hinata made the decision to play with the girls as well. Naturally, it appeared to everyone else that she had ruined a really good practical joke. Kiba began to perspire profusely. Kiba said, sorry ladies, I really appreciate your hugs today, but I'm a busy guy and a Euro bye, and then he quickly turned to leave. The fan club, furious that they had been duped, chased after Kiba with a ferocity that would have scared any of the teachers. Then, with an anxious Akumaru in his hands, Sasuke emerged from his hiding spot in the rear of the room. I hope Kiba will be okay, Akumara. Don't worry, Sasuke said. The laughter that had been building inside Naruto was released on the floor. Though she never displayed it or would ever acknowledge it, Hinata had a perfect view of the entire situation and thought it was hilarious. Serves them right, they would have realized Sasuke's substitution immediately if they truly took their ninja career seriously. After saying that, Hinata returned to her contemplation of losing her clan heiress title. Even though she put a lot of effort into her studies and training, she barely defeated her sister the last time. Because she lacked skill in the Juken fighting style, the elders viewed her as weak. Until my sister beats me and becomes heiress, how much longer can I beat her? Hinata thought. Will my father apply the caged bird seal to me right away, or will it wait until I'm old enough to get married? I wonder, Hinata asked. We heard Sasuke Uchiha call the instructor. After placing Akumaru on the ground, Sasuke left to take his test. Sasuke walked confidently into the testing room. After wishing his friend luck, Naruto took a seat next to him. He began tapping his feet on the floor out of nervousness. The icy Hyuga in the back had been distracted from his thoughts by this tapping. Ignoring him, Hinata returned to her thoughts, attempting to come up with training methods that would enable her to defeat her sister. The tapping of fingers on a desk then interrupted her once more. She glared slightly as she turned back to face Naruto. Naruto was so focused on his exam anxieties that he didn't even realize it. Hinata ignored him again and returned to her thoughts. Then a humming caught her attention. Glancing back, she noticed that Naruto was now humming and tapping his fingers and feet. The agitated Hyuga exclaimed, "Can you worry about the test in a quiet way? I'm trying to think here." The words, "Well, I'm sorry if it disturbs you, princess, but I don't really care if I disrupt your thinking," were Naruto's response when he realized she was speaking to him. No one had ever responded to her in such a way. What was that, you piece of filth? Hinata frowned. You heard me, princess, I don't give a damn about you. Sorry if I'm the first to tell you that, but I'm not going to show respect to someone who thinks everyone is below her. shouted Naruto. Why you little euro, you should had your tongue removed with that. Said Hinata. Like you could, princess, if people had the power to do that I'd be dead by now. Replied Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki, was said by a teacher before Hinata could respond. Naruto grinned as he walked out of his set and toward the testing area. I must thank you, princess, it seems that our talk ended up calming my nerves, he said as he turned around at the door. Naruto then turned and shut the door, leaving Hinata furious at her desk in the corner in the class in silence, wondering what the hell had happened. As soon as Naruto walked into the testing room, his confidence vanished, and he silently prayed to Kami that he would pass. Hello Naruto, said Iruka-sensei, and Naruto returned the greeting, grinning. Naruto had developed a unique bond with his sensei over the years. Iruka, the only teacher at the school who had treated Naruto like a human, would help him understand the material by giving him hints when he was having trouble in class. Ready? Iruka asked as she began the test. With a nod, Naruto got ready for the first jutsu. Alright Naruto, first I want you to do a substitution jutsu. Iruka replied. After shouting, substitution no jutsu, and nodding, Naruto teleported to the far right of the room, where a desk took his place. Okay Naruto, now I want you to perform a henge jutsu, Iruka said, calling Naruto back over after being pleased with the outcome. A sly smile was plastered on Naruto's face. Naruto yelled, "Sexy no jutsu," and a cloud of smoke erupted from him, knowing that every teacher in front of him was actually a pervert. A beautiful nude girl with smoke covering her more intimate areas stood in front of them as the teachers waited for the smoke to clear, perplexed by the jutsu name they had heard. With the final word, the hanged Naruto pouted and asked, "Is this okay, Iruka-sensei?" At the same time, all three of the teachers had severe nosebleeds, which caused them to collapse back in their seats. Naruto reverted to his previous form and was laughing while gripping his sides. Naruto went from laughing to cowering in 0.052 seconds when he was greeted by three irate teachers with tissues up their noses. Naruto, could you perform the henge jutsu please? Iruka asked, regaining his composure, in a tone that implied that if he didn't, Naruto would be in serious trouble. Naruto nodded and swallowed. By uttering the phrase, henge no jutsu, Naruto had transformed himself in the third Hokage. Being the creator of the sexy jutsu, Naruto had gained incredible skill in the fine details of the henge jutsu. Impressed with how realistic the henge was, Iruka said, "Well done Naruto. Here is the last jutsu. Would you mind practicing the Bunshin jutsu? Pull yourself together, like Sasuke said, getting stressed will only hurt me. I need to calm down." Naruto's hands were shaking and he was startling. Naruto took a deep breath and exclaimed, "Bunshin no jutsu." Iruka's perspiration fell when he saw the three Naruto clones that appeared to be half-cooked pancakes. He knew that Naruto had trouble with the Bunshin no jutsu, but this was pitiful. Iruka concluded the test by saying, "Thank you for the demonstration, Naruto. We'll be telling you your exam results in a few minutes." After leaving the testing room, Naruto walked to his desk, sighed, and deflated onto it. "Did it go that bad?" Sasuke asked, raising an eyebrow. "No, but my bunshins looked like cake batter that didn't cook right," he asked jokingly. "No," Naruto replied, turning his head toward the desk, and he sighed. Sasuke hoped that his friend wouldn't fail the test because of this. He knew that Naruto had a lot of chakra reserves and had trouble controlling them, but that didn't mean anything to the teachers. He wasn't sure why most of the teachers discriminated against Naruto, but he hoped that with Iruka-sensei in charge of the tests, Naruto would at least try. Iruka, who was not allowed to have favorites as a teacher, had to admit that he had been hoping that Naruto out of all of his students had passed. He stood in front of the class with a clipboard and grinned as the students got up from their seats and went to the front of the room to get their Konoha forehead protector. Shino Aburame was the first name called, followed by Shoji Akamichi, Sakura Haruno, Hinata Hyuga, and so on, until eventually all but four people Naruto were at the front of the room. Sasuke went to try to console his friend after Iruka's speech, but Naruto sank into his chair and said, "Don't. I just need some space right now. I'll talk to you later," Sasuke said, nodding and leaving his friend with a slight frown. Hinata was grinning as she passed, thinking, "Serves you right, Dobi." She then went to the schoolyard to be escorted home. "It seems no matter how hard I try I'll never be able to produce a good bunshin," Naruto sighed, thinking he would get it right this time. Choosing to leave the school before they threw him out, Naruto headed for the entrance. When Mizuki saw Naruto leave the school, he executed his plan. Mizuki had been forced to assist in teaching that brat for the previous 5 years, and now he was going to make sure that brat suffered as a result. Mizuki was waiting for Naruto to emerge from the school on the roof. "Hi, Naruto. Hey Naruto, I know you're upset that you didn't pass the test, but I've got a secret to tell you," said Mizuki in a hushed voice. Naruto looked up to see his teacher, Mizuki. "Oh, hi Mizuki-sensei," said Naruto, still upset about his test results. Mizuki saw this depression and knew it would be too easy to fool the boy. "What secret?" asked Mizuki, raising an eyebrow at Naruto, looking at his teacher with curiosity. There is a secret test that we only give out to a special few students," Mizuki said with a genuine smile in response to Naruto's question. "I can allow you to take this unique test if you'd like." Naruto's eyes widened as Mizuki explained, "But you can't tell anyone about it, otherwise the secret will be ruined." "Really? I'm still capable of becoming a genin," Naruto yelled. "Slow down." Mizuki yelled in a low voice. "All right, Mizuki-sensei. What must I do to pass this test?" Naruto inquired. "There's a scroll in the Hokage's office that's guarded and you have to steal it and then make your way to the old house in the woods on the outskirts of the village," said Mizuki with a sly smile. "I've got this kid hook, line, and sinker." Naruto didn't consider the possibility that this could be a trap. He simply knew that this was another opportunity for him to become a genin of Konoha without having to perform the dumb Bunshin jutsu. Naruto nodded and inquired, "When does this test start?" "Right now," said Mizuki, and Naruto drove off to the Hokage's office. Mizuki, who was now grinning, began to walk to the place where he had instructed Naruto to meet him, laughing as he went. "What an idiot that demon. He'll steal the most important scroll in Konoha and then give it to me. He'll be blamed and I'll be halfway to Orochimaru-sama," Mizuki thought as he strolled through the village he detested. After reaching the Hokage's office, Naruto was hiding on the rooftop of a nearby building, trying to think of ways to enter and exit without being noticed, but he was at a loss for ideas. Why didn't I practice stealth more with Sasuke? How am I going to get in? It's not like I can just walk in and walk out without anyone noticing me," he thought, but then he realized, "Wait, I don't need them not to notice me, I just need them to think that I'm someone else." Naruto then leapt off the rooftop and into a nearby ally, yelling, "Henge no just you." Having been on guard duty for nearly 9 hours with no replacements yet, the Chunin who guarded the Hokage's office were bored. Deciding that nothing would happen if he took a nap, one of them sat on the ground and began to nod off, only to be woken up by his partner's announcement that the Hokage was on his way. He leapt to his feet and brushed himself off, thanking his partner. The two Chunin bowed to the Hokage as he came closer, and the Hokage reciprocated by bowing his head in respect and moving on. "Yes, I'm in," Naruto thought, and he proceeded to search the office for the scroll until he reached a room with 2 more Chunin outside. "This must be the scroll room," he thought, and he continued to pose as the Hokage. As he approached the door, he was once more greeted by the Chunin with bows, and he bowed his head to answer the greeting before entering the room. There was a large scroll in the back of the room, which was undoubtedly what Naruto was looking for. Naruto didn't care that it was dark and had few pieces of furniture, so he grabbed it and then hanged himself again to make it appear as though he wasn't carrying it before leaving the office. Once outside, Naruto kept moving until he found a spot to transform. He soon found an ally who was empty, and after determining that no one was looking, he stopped using the Henge jutsu and proceeded at full speed to the meeting spot Mizuki-sensei had instructed him to go to. Now, this trip would have taken about 5 minutes for any other genin, 3 minutes for someone like Kiba, and 1 minute and 30 seconds for Naruto. After noticing that Mizuki-sensei had not yet arrived, Naruto thought, "Well, I might as well see what's on this scroll." Naruto carefully placed the enormous scroll on the ground and opened it, reading, "Water Samurai Jutsu." Water armor, which could be harder than steel, was created around the user by this B-ranked water jutsu technique. It could, however, collapse or crush the user if the water pressure is not adjusted properly. Warning not for those who lack good chakra control, according to Naruto. Naruto continued after deciding he didn't want to run the risk of being crushed by water armor. Wind Katana Jutsu makes a sword of compressed wind chakra in the user's hand. Warning could cut fingers off if the user doesn't have good chakra control, according to Naruto. Naruto grumbled, "Erg, why do all of these require good chakra control?" Returning to the scroll, Naruto searched for a jutsu that didn't involve controlling chakras. "Found one!" exclaimed Naruto. "Shadow clone jutsu, like a normal clone, but has a physical form." This allows the clone to fight, do reconnaissance, gather information, and train. Memories of the clones return to the caster once they run out of chakra, or they receive a certain amount of damage, according to Naruto. Do not attempt if you don't have a large chakra supply. According to Naruto. The blonde said, yes. This is perfect for me. Naruto then began using the jutsu in practice. Iruka was terrified. He had just received word that the village's jutsu scroll had been spotted with Naruto. Some of the most deadly ninjutsu ever seen in the 5 great nations were contained in that priceless scroll. Iruka doubled his search speed in the hopes of finding his student before the Anbu did. Lying on the ground, Naruto was attempting to catch his breath. He had just used up half of his chakra reserves while mastering the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto sat up when he heard someone touch down and saw Iruka-sensei. Hi, Iruka-sensei, Naruto said. Look, I got the scroll just like I was supposed to. Do I get to become a genin now? Said Naruto. Iruka was perplexed by this. Naruto, what do you mean you were supposed to get the scroll? That's the most sacred scroll in the village. It has countless deadly justice in it that could spell our doom if it fell into the hands of another village. Mizuki-sensei didn't mention that, said Naruto, perplexed. What are you, a Euro Naruto? Watch out! Iruka yelled. Naruto ducked a huge shuriken that was hurled at him before turning to face his attacker. Well done, Naruto. You got the scroll just like I asked you. Now give it to me and maybe I'll let you live, Mizuki said in a menacing tone as she emerged from the tree shadows and clapped. What? Naruto yelled. Don't you understand that you said you would turn me into a genin if I brought you the scroll? You are a demon brat, and we would never allow you to become a ninja. Are you curious as to why? Why are mobs chasing you? Why are you despised by the village? And why are so many calling for your blood to be shed? Iruka began. Mizuki, don't you dare. But Mizuki interrupted. Shut up, Iruka. You're blind, Iruka. This village has become softer. Those who are strong leave, and the ninja are weak. So I'm going to do just that. I will depart, join Orochimaru, and grow stronger. Enough strength to level this hellhole for allowing the 9-tailed fox to roam freely among us. Mizuki yelled, gradually becoming more and more crazy. What are you referring to, 9-tailed fox? Mizuki, don't do this. Inquired Naruto, perplexed by Mizuki's statement. He's only a kid, shouted Iruka, trying to reason with the man he once called a friend. A child? A kid? He's not a kid. Do you want to know why? Because the 4th Hokage sealed the fox rather than killing it. You are the 9-tailed fox, Mizuki remarked, gesturing to Naruto. My parents were taken from me by you. Iruka's parents were taken from him by you. You'll be held accountable for the suffering you've caused us. After concluding his tirade, Mizuki hurled his second giant shuriken at Naruto. That's why they hate me? I'm the 9-tailed fox? I did that? I killed Iruka-sensei's parents. Naruto was still in shock over the news and didn't realize the shuriken was coming at him until he felt blood trickle down his face. He looked up with tears in his eyes and saw that Iruka had taken the shuriken for him, and he had a stream of blood coming from his mouth. Naruto. Kageyuro, you are not the 9-tailed fox Yuro Kageyuro, you are Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto said. Iruka coughed up more blood and went on, the future Hokage of Konoha Yuro. The 9-tailed fox is sealed inside you. But that Kageyuro doesn't make you the fox. Iruka concluded, you are a Yuro Kageyuro or who you choose to be Yuro. And collapsed onto his side, rolling onto his back, losing the ability to stand on his own 2 legs. Mizuki, who didn't recognize the hand signs and didn't want to see what would happen, rushed forward with a kunai in hand, intending to kill Naruto in one blow. Naruto was crying because no one had ever done anything so selfless for him before. As his anger grew, he made a series of hand signs that ended with his fingers making a plus sign. Cage. Bunshina Yuro no Jutsu. Shouted Naruto, and smoke filled the area in a 200-meter diameter from where he stood. Mizuki stopped his rush and took a defensive stance. As Mizuki scowled, Iruka's eyes widened at the sight. Hundreds of Naruto clones appeared around them. You think a bunch of illusions will fool me? Mizuki smirked at this, saying, what do they hope to do? Scare me away? How pathetic. I'll show him what true strength is. He then drove off to where he saw the real Naruto standing last and stabbed the clone with his kunai. Poof! Mizuki became enraged and attempted to attack again, but Naruto wasn't going to stand by and watch. The clones charged Mizuki in unison, with fists and kicks at the ready. It would be an understatement to say that Mizuki was shocked when he felt hundreds of Naruto's fists and feet landing on every part of his body. The Narutos had not spared him in those blows, and Mizuki had never been in more pain. Mizuki passed out from the shock, falling backwards and twitching on the ground. Iruka's jaw was agape as she tried to figure out how Naruto had managed to pull off such a feat. He then noticed that the sacred scroll had been opened to reveal shadow clones. Naruto's ability to learn such a high-ranking jutsu in such a short period of time further impressed Iruka. As Naruto expelled the clones, he experienced a wave of fatigue. Naruto rushed to his sensei, pushing aside his fatigue. With tears in his eyes, Naruto questioned, "Iruka-sensei, are you going to be okay?" Only Iruka's head had moved, despite the fact that he had responded to the entire battle. Since he had fallen, his body had not moved an inch. "I'll be Finia Euro Kaga Euro Naruto. Anbu must have seen your fight and a Euro cough. Should be heading over here this very moment," assured Iruka. His pride in his student had never been greater. Then, that night, Iruka did the last thing Naruto had anticipated. Iruka sat up against his will, coughing most of the time. After untying his forehead protector with his hands behind his head, he tied it around Naruto's head. As Naruto couldn't contain the tears that had formed waterfalls from his eyes to the ground, Iruka declared, "From this day forth, Kaga-Euro, you will no longer be Naruto Uzumaki, the demon child of Konoha. Cough. Kaga-Euro, you are now Naruto Uzumaki, Kaga-Euro ninja of Konoha." Naruto wanted to stay and wait until his sensei was okay, but another Anbu pulled him away as Iruka finished. Anbu had finally located them and was then giving Iruka first aid. "Naruto," said an old and upset voice. Naruto flinched at this and slowly turned his head to the owner of that voice. "Gigi. What is going on? I hope you know what you did today was very dangerous and nearly had you exiled from the village," answered a trembling Naruto, whose knees had already begun to shake at the tone of the third Hokage's voice. Hiruzen yelled, and Naruto screamed in response. "I had to use all of my authority as Hokage from the council to prevent you from becoming a ninja." Naruto sighed, grateful that the ninja career he had just gained was about to be taken away from him a minute later. "However, you did stop a traitor from escaping with the village's sacred scroll, and because of that the council agreed to let you go without punishment," the old Sarutobi continued, making sure Naruto heard and understood everything he said. "Hey Gigi, how did the council know I fought Mizuki Teme when you didn't get here until after the fight?" Naruto said, realizing something. "I have a magic ball that I can use to locate objects or people," Hiruzen said with a smile. "I used it to find you in the scroll, but I also saw you protecting your sensei and the secrets of this village. I had left a shadow clone to deal with the council that had just disbursted," Naruto said, referring to the timing of everything. After learning an A-ranked jutsu beforehand and feeling exhausted from the battle, Naruto asked if he could go home right away. With a slight smile, Hiruzen requested that one of the Anbu take Naruto home. Upon reaching his apartment, Naruto bid farewell to the Anbu escort and proceeded inside, taking care to steer clear of the shattered glass from a window that had been broken earlier in the day. Not caring that he hadn't taken off his perspiration-soaked clothes, Naruto collapsed face first onto the pillow in front of his bed and fell asleep immediately. The following day, when Naruto entered the classroom the following day at the academy, he was met with a barrage of perplexed glances. "Naruto, what are you doing here? I thought you didn't make it," said Sasuke. He didn't know how, but he was glad his friend was there. Naruto's prepared response was, "The teachers decided to give me another chance after school after noticing I have larger than normal chakra coils." The majority of the class was satisfied and didn't care enough to inquire further. Sasuke made the decision to question Naruto further after learning that there was more to his promotion. Naruto went to find a seat after friends greeted him and congratulated him. Unfortunately, fangirls occupied Naruto's usual seat next to Sasuke because he had been late because he had slept in. Naruto looked around the room, trying to find another seat. Naruto hurried to sit down and wait for the teachers to reveal their Genin teams after spotting one in the rear. Naruto sighed as he sat down and approached the person sharing the desk to strike up a conversation. "Hi, who do you think you'll get on your Euro?" Naruto began his greeting as he turned his head and grinned. When Naruto turned to face the cold glare of a Hinata Hyuga who was trying to puncture the back of Naruto's head, his greeting came to an abrupt halt. This continued for a few seconds until Naruto broke the hush. Naruto exclaimed, "What are you doing here?" without realizing that the Hyuga had occupied that seat in the classroom for the previous 5 years. With no warmth in her voice, Hinata answered, This just so happens to be my seat, peasant. Now if you would be so kind, would you please move so I don't have to be in such proximity to something so disgusting? Well, if you haven't noticed, princess, there's no other seats available thanks to Sasuke's fan club, so how about we agree to mind each other's business and wait for our Genin teams in silence, suggested Naruto. Fine, but after today I hope to never see your face again, stated Hinata. Don't worry, princess, you're not much to look at either, said Naruto. When a teacher entered with a clipboard and called for the class's attention, Hinata's face flushed at this remark and she was about to give Naruto the benefit of the doubt. Hinata sat back down, gave Naruto a snarling look, and then shifted the focus to the instructor. Man, it's entertaining to agitate her. Thank you, Kami. After today, I won't be seeing her very often, Naruto thought. I don't think I'd last 3 days on her team. The instructor began. Okay, the Genin teams consist of 3 Genin and 1 Jonin teacher. I will be calling you in groups of 3, these are your teammates. Once the teams are assigned, your Junin sensei will come to pick you up. Remember, your teammates are your allies and could save your life any and every day when on a mission. Now the first team, Team 3 will be. Team 8 is Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame, and Sakura Haruno. Your Junin sensei is Kurenai Yuhi. Team 10 is Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, and Choji Akamichi. Your Junin sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. Now the final team is Team 7, which will consist of Sasuke Uchiha, Naruto Uzumaki, clapping his hands, and Hinata Hyuga, finished the instructor. What? Exclaimed Hinata and Naruto. The two had reacted so loudly that the teacher had been knocked to the ground. The teacher got back up and said, Kakashi Hatake will be your Junin sensei. The instructor then left the recently promoted Genins to mingle with their groups. Naruto stiffened and reluctantly turned to Hinata, who now had a shadow over her eyes. So teammate Ayuro, he said. Hinata said, it looks like we'll be seeing each other a lot more. Get in my way and you will wish you had never entered this world. She had now shown Naruto her eyes, which, if it were possible, would kill him 10 times over. Fearing what his new teammate would do, Naruto swallowed. Sasuke sighed, knowing that his 2 teammates found each other unbearable, but he was grateful that his team didn't have any fangirls. Sasuke went to the back and sat between the two to act as a barrier after deciding to go save Naruto before he was killed by their teammate. Hemp, Hinata said, turning away to avoid the blonde as much as possible while she waited for their sensei to arrive. As he recovered from Hinata's glare, Naruto began talking to Sasuke about their new sensei's strength and the exciting missions they would be going on. All of the other teams had left with their Junin sensei after the first hour, and Team 7 had found new places to sit. Hinata remained patiently waiting for their sensei in the back, while Naruto and Sasuke had returned to their seats. What kind of a tardy Junin is this? Is he aware of my identity? There are so many other things I need to do, Hinata thought. Sasuke was now half asleep in his chair after deciding to take a nap. But Naruto was so bored that he was lying face down on the desk. Where is he? Naruto grumbled. Though they both displayed it in different ways, Hinata had finally agreed with him that neither of them was particularly patient. Naruto went up to the blackboard at the front of the classroom and picked up an eraser, deciding to give his sensei a lesson. At this, Hinata arched an eyebrow and looked to see what he was doing. Naruto grabbed a chair and stood on it after slightly opening the door. After that, he positioned the eraser between the door and the doorframe and shut the door just enough to hold the eraser in place until the door was opened. Does he really believe that a Junin can be fooled by such a basic trick? Hinata thought. 20 minutes later, a slack-headed white-haired ninja opened the door and dropped the eraser on Hinata's head, proving him wrong. Naruto chuckled at his new sensei's gullibility. Hinata and Sasuke started to perspire. Meet me on the roof in 5 minutes, the man said, pausing briefly after being struck by the eraser and turning to face the 3. Then he left as though nothing had occurred. Just as their sensei had told them, the 3 genin followed his directions and headed for the roof. The odd man was sitting on the building's ledge when they got there, and he motioned for them to take a seat in front of him. Curious about the man, the 3 followed instructions and waited for him to begin. Okay. My name is Kakashi Hatake and I'll be your Junin instructor. Now I want you each to say your name, your ambitions, things you like to do, and things you don't like to do. My name is Hinata Hyuga. I plan to become head of the Hyuga clan. I enjoy training and flower pressing. I dislike spicy food and blonde idiots. Hinata began after taking a deep breath. Sasuke interrupted Naruto as he was about to respond to the smirking Hyuga's comment with an introduction. With a glare at Kakashi, who had the corner of an orange book protruding from his side pocket, Sasuke concluded. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I plan to find a certain someone and find the truth. I enjoy training in Dango. I dislike perverts and those who think I'm so great being the last Uchiha. Kakashi turned to Naruto, ignoring Sasuke's scowl. With a quick glare at the Hyuga heiress who didn't notice, Naruto declared, my name is Naruto Uzumaki, believe it. I'm going to be Hokage. I like training in ramen. I dislike gatherings and people who think they're better than everyone else because of blood. Well, I guess that leaves me. As I said before, my name is Kakashi Hatake. My ambition's a Euro, never thought about the future, so I don't know. I like a Euro somethings. I dislike a Euro other things, concluded Kakashi. Sweat dropped from the three Genin. Well, tomorrow I will test you to see what you're capable of, so don't have breakfast otherwise you want it to be on the ground later. Meet at training field 7 at 9:30, replied Kakashi. Then, in a whirl of leaves, he shunshin away. Hinata got up and walked away. Do you really think he's going to be that intense? Naruto asked, turning to face Sasuke. Well, he is a Junin, so a Euro I think it'd be best not to eat. If we find it to be easy we can just bring snacks, replied Sasuke. Naruto nodded in agreement, satisfied with this response. Naruto said, do you want to get some ramen? Sasuke grinned and said, only if we get Dango after and you pay for your own bowls. The two headed to Ichiraku's to celebrate being added to a Genin team after Naruto grinned. Hinata had just joined her father, sister, uncle, and cousin at the dinner table. Heishi inquired, who was your assigned Junin sensei? His name is Kakashi Hatake, Hinata said icily, highlighting the name of her sensei. At this, Heishi arched an eyebrow. Heishi went on, and who are your teammates? Hinata's annoyance at her blonde teammate surfaced as she said, they are Sasuke Uchiha and the class fool, Naruto Uzumaki. Her team piqued the interest of both Heishi and Hisashi. The brothers believed that the three most powerful Genin of her class were all on one team. Hisashi inquired, and what do you think of your teammates, Hinata? Uchiha-san is competent, but for some reason hangs around that Uzumaki. Uzumaki-san had the lowest scores in the class, rarely ever won a taijutsu match, can't make a simple clone, and is the most infuriating person I've ever met, replied Hinata, burying her fists under the. Well, brother, that's pretty fascinating, Hisashi remarked. Very, I am interested to see the results your team brings, Hinata. Especially Naruto Uzumaki, Heishi responded. Why? If anything, he has less capability than the average civilian student, Hinata asked, not understanding what her father and uncle were trying to say. Hinata, did you ever question whether or not the boy is withholding his true abilities? Replied Hisashi. Now Neji was paying attention to what was being said. What is it about this boy that piques the interest of his father and uncle? Well, I've noticed he seemed to give up easier than the other students in most things at Euro, said Hinata. Considering the surprises Hinata would receive from this teammate of hers, Heishi grinned. Well, it is time for bed. I will see you in the morning, Hinata, before you leave to meet with your team. I'm assuming you sensei said not to eat breakfast, replied Heishi. Hinata wondered, yes, a Euro, why? About how her father had been aware of her sensei's instructions without her informing him. Heishi said, well, it's best to listen to him. A Junin doesn't make threats like that idly, and walked away. Shortly after, Hisashi asked Neji to accompany Hanabi to her room before leaving. At the age of 8, Hanabi was on the verge of completing her first year at the academy. Sitting at the table, Hinata considered what her father and uncle had said, attempting to interpret the bewildering discussion she had just had. Watch the Uzumaki fool, what do they mean? The outcast of the entire village. He is nothing but the lowest of the low. Why did my father and uncle find him so fascinating? Hinata thought. Hinata went to bed with a growing list of questions in order to avoid trouble and to get ready for the trials of the morning. Naruto was renowned for his ability to overcome insurmountable obstacles, such as consuming 20 bowls of ramen in a single sitting, studying as much as the class's top student and still receiving the second lowest test scores, and engaging in exercises that would leave a normal person gasping for air while he was bursting with energy. This also applied to Naruto's ability to move while he slept. Naruto had gone to bed with his head resting on the pillows, his arms acting as pillows, and his legs pointing toward the foot of the bed. In the morning, Naruto's head was suspended from the foot of the bed, his arms were positioned similarly to his head, and one leg was resting on the pillows while the other was occasionally twitching in midair. Additionally, Naruto had created a bubble around his nose, which anyone observing could see expand and contract in response to his breathing. The sound of the room was quiet, but the sight was unsettling. The words, RRRINNNNNNGGGGGGG, broke the silence. Crunch. The unfortunate alarm clock was crushed when Naruto sat up and slammed it into his side table. Naruto rubbed one eye before heading to the restroom to wash up for the day. After finishing up, Naruto changed into his recognizable orange jumper and got ready for the day. Naruto noticed that it was 8:47 when he looked at the clock and recalled Sasuke's snack suggestion. However, Naruto had a better idea. He learned how to use a sealing scroll that Gigi had given him when he was 12 years old. Gigi also explained to Naruto that time wouldn't have any effect on anything in a sealing scroll. Naruto picked up the scroll and headed to Ichiraku's to stack as much ramen as he could with it. Sasuke had a similar morning. After waking up, washing, and dressing, Sasuke went to work on his dango making technique. Although many were aware that the young Uchiha had a passion for dango that rivaled Anko's, only Naruto was aware that the Uchiha had spent the previous 3 years attempting to establish his own. Sasuke experienced a great deal of trial and error because Naruto was the test subject in the beginning. Fortunately, Sasuke's efforts were greatly improved when Naruto chose to give him a book about creating dango for his birthday. It was still very good, even though it couldn't compete with Tenrai Dango, Sasuke's favorite dango shop. Like Naruto, Sasuke preserved his sweets with a sealing scroll. After that, Sasuke performed a cleaning jutsu that he and Naruto had developed and replaced all of the cooking implements. Sasuke checked the clock and saw that it was 9:08. Sasuke went to the training ground after locking the door of his apartment. By 8 o'clock, Hinata was clean and prepared for the day. Hinata heeded Kakashi's warning and headed for the training ground, hungry and determined. When Hinata got there, she noticed that nobody was there, so she took a seat beneath a nearby tree and bided her time until her teammates showed up. At 9:23, Naruto unexpectedly arrived second. Naruto went to sit 20 feet away under another tree after realizing that it was just him and the heiress. Naruto attempted to strike up a conversation with the Hyuga, knowing that since they were teammates, he might as well try to be friendly. Naruto remarked, "So you're here early?" Hinata interrupted, hoping the boy would stop talking. "Yes, I usually wake up early and since we were told not to eat breakfast, I didn't have any reason to stay at home." In an attempt to continue the conversation, Naruto added, "So since you're a Hyuga, your family has that cool eye power, right?" Like Sasuke's. Hinata responded, "Yes, my family is the Byakugan wielders," hoping the blonde would stop talking before he genuinely annoyed her. With genuine curiosity, Naruto questioned, "If I recall correctly, doesn't the Byakugan allow for X-ray vision? What stops people from invading each other's privacy?" Hinata was tired of the brief exchange, not because of the subjects, but because she was arguing with Naruto. Hinata yelled, "We are not permitted to use the Byakugan within the compound. Now please be quiet," in the hopes of getting the boy to stop. However, the exact opposite happened. "Seriously? I'm trying to have a normal conversation with you and this is how you respond. I thought since we're teammates we could try to get along, but I guess someone has stuck you as incapable of it," said Naruto. "Why would I try to socialize with you? The village outcast. If the other village peasants won't talk to you, why should I, the heiress to the most powerful clan in Konoha?" said Hinata. A shadow had obscured Naruto's eyes. He stopped and stared at the roadway. "You're right, I am the village outcast. I should be lucky to be within the same vicinity as you. Someone who has everything. Wealth, respect, a family. To think we're on the same team. Oh, how the world plays cruel jokes." Naruto then fell silent and bided his time until Sasuke and their sensei arrived. Hinata was shocked by Naruto's sudden change in demeanor. One moment he was on the verge of a heated argument, and the next he was emotionless. Hinata tried to divert her attention from Naruto's remarks by focusing on her training schedule. Sadly for the Hyuga, she was unable to forget what Naruto had said. Why did his mood swing so drastically? What does he mean when he says that I have everything? Even though he isn't very rich, it doesn't seem like that would explain his lack of emotion. He will never understand my suffering or the strain that someone in my situation faces, even if he is not wealthy. Pressure he's never experienced before, through Hinata. A little after 9:30, Sasuke arrived and observed his two teammates' silence. He sighed and moved to sit next to Naruto as they waited for their sensei. Naruto pulled out his ink, brush, and scroll after the first hour of preparation. Naruto had been visiting the library to learn how to make them himself ever since Gigi had given him the sealing scroll. Only 2 sealing scrolls he had managed to create in all his endeavors were functional, but they wore out after 2 or 3 uses. Naruto had been trying to get better at writing fuinjutsu since the more precise and consistent the markings on the seal were, the more durable it was. Preparing for such a scenario, Sasuke pulled out Uchiha scroll on fire jutsu and began practicing some of the simpler chakra molding techniques to try to improve his elemental chakra nature. Hinata was taken aback when Naruto began practicing making seal signs because she had brought nothing to occupy her time. What? The most difficult jutsu a ninja can learn is fuinjutsu. How can the class idiot perform such a difficult jutsu while nearly failing every test? Now curious to find out what else Naruto Uzumaki was concealing from the world, Hinata thought. The 3 genin saw their sensei strolling down the road to the training field at approximately 11:45. Upon closer examination, it was evident that he was holding the same orange book that had been in his pocket the day before. Naruto and Sasuke, who could now see the entire cover, glared at Kakashi. The 2 boys received no attention from Kakashi. Hinata had no idea why Naruto and Sasuke were so upset about that book. Hinata smirked and thought, I'll just have to find out later. Who knows, maybe I can use it on Naruto to get him to shut up. Icha Icha Paradise was the title, and Hinata mentally noted that she would look it up at the library later. As he waved one hand to greet his genin team, Kakashi grinned and said, sorry, an old lady needed help with her groceries. Was that the best justification he could think of? The 3 genin thought. Kakashi observed the trio of genin. Sasuke is already practicing element jutsu. Naruto is also learning fuinjutsu. It will be interesting to watch these 2. Hinata doesn't appear to have discovered anything to research. She has probably been too busy practicing juken. Okay, so let's get started, Kakashi said, raising 2 bells. You will be given till 2 to get these 2 bells. Whoever doesn't will be sent back to the academy, stated Kakashi. What? After his outburst, Kakashi leaned back and said, I'm starting this clock. If you don't get the bells by the time it goes off, you all will be sent to the academy. Also, if you don't come at me with the intent to kill, you will fail. He paused for a moment before continuing. As he completed setting the clock, Kakashi said, and your test starts a euro now, and the genin went pale. In an attempt to surprise his sensei, Naruto charged with a fist ready. Kakashi kicked Naruto into a nearby tree after deflecting it with ease. Kakashi put his leg down, pulled out his book, and began to read. That Kakashi had such low regard for her abilities made Hinata frown. Hinata extended her hand in preparation for the Juken strike. Kakashi continued to read his book while avoiding this and the subsequent barrage of blows. After growing weary of the Hyuga's attacks, Kakashi grabbed Hinata's wrist with his free hand and threw her into Naruto, who was attempting to jump on Kakashi from a treetop. Before Kakashi heard the thud of Naruto colliding with a tree, she heard several tree branches breaking. After striking the tree for a few seconds, Hinata had recovered and was running back to the action. However, the impact caused a spirit of Naruto to emerge from his mouth. Sasuke was attempting to come up with a plan to retrieve the bells while he watched Kakashi from a nearby tree. In the brief moment that Sasuke had been thinking, Kakashi had vanished from the clearing, leaving him with little time to reflect. Kakashi, who had fallen beside the genin and remained behind Sasuke, remarked, "Wow, this is a really good view of the area." Sasuke moved swiftly, leaping away and hurling a large number of kunai. "Fireball jutsu!" yelled Sasuke, continuing the assault. He's a genin and has such strong jutsu skills. Kakashi thought. Kakashi used the tunneling jutsu and fled underground to avoid the strong attack. After landing on the ground, Sasuke scanned his surroundings to determine Kakashi's next target. Kakashi was standing in front of Sasuke when he was pulled into the ground up to his neck before he could comprehend what was happening. "With that type of ninjutsu, I'd say you're ahead of the game, Sasuke," said Kakashi. Sasuke returned his sensei's disillusioned glance. Kakashi left to find his other students, sighing that his student had failed to appreciate the beauty of his humor. Hinata had started hiding in the trees as well. She had made the decision to slow down and evaluate the situation after her initial attack to test her sensei. "He'll have no trouble avoiding my Juken. Even though he appears lethargic, I'll have to surprise him to get one of those bells." At that moment, she noticed Naruto coming into the clearing. Naruto had staggered back to the training ground clearing after finally recovering from his 2 hits. He saw a bell beneath a tree as he scanned his surroundings. "Look at that. I must be having a fortunate day." As he jogged over to retrieve the bell, Naruto thought. When he reached the bell, He halted a short distance away and squinted at the floor. Naruto yelled, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," and a clone materialized. After that, the clone attempted to pick up the bell but was dragged into the area to hang like a bungee jumper after falling into a trap. Unappreciated by his clone, the real Naruto chuckled at the scene. Naruto went to retrieve the bell after defeating the clone. But as he did, he became aware that something wasn't quite right. Naruto yelled, "Release!" while raising his right hand in a hand gesture. A tiny rock was left in its place after the bell vanished in a cloud of smoke. If only it was that easy, Naruto sighed. Kakashi said, "Yeah, well, I guess you'll just have to try again," after emerging behind Naruto. "He still doesn't have a style," observed Kakashi, after Naruto threw a series of fists and kicks at him. After Naruto delivered another blow, Kakashi appeared behind him, making the tiger sign with his hands. "Sensei's going to use such a powerful attack on him?" Hinata's eyes widened. Even with medical ninjutsu, he will never succeed. She didn't want her teammate to die, even though she thought he was annoying. Hinata yelled, "Naruto, look out," in the hopes that she wouldn't have to say it again. Kakashi pushed his fingers into Naruto's butt and yelled, "Too late, Leaf Village Ultimate Jutsu. 1,000 years of death," instead. After taking a moment to process what had happened, Naruto hurled himself as far away from Kakashi as he could. He ended up clutching his butt as he flew into the nearby river. The antics of her teammate and sensei caused Hinata to perspire. When Naruto fell into the river, he was furious. WTF the death was that? Kakashi-sensei, you will pay for that one. Suddenly, a large number of clones erupted from the river as Naruto made the well-known cross with his hands. Knowing full well that they were shadow clones, Kakashi's eyes widened at the sight. This kid has so much chakra. What Naruto did perplexed Hinata. He can make a horde of clones, but not a few simple ones. What does he believe clones will accomplish? They're merely delusions. Hinata thought. When the clones began attacking Kakashi, the heiress was taken aback and refused to back down. How do you describe those clones? Hinata thought. Kakashi gradually destroyed the majority of Naruto's. Naruto attempted to attack from behind when the last one popped, but someone grabbed his ankles and dragged him to the ground up to his neck. Naruto exclaims, "What the? You know you're not the only one who can perform the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," replied Kakashi. Despite his best efforts, Naruto was unable to break out of his prison. Kakashi continued, "Now I think there's one more that I need to deal with," and he shunned away. After a minute, there was a brief cry of surprise coming from the forest. In the training area, Kakashi used the tunneling jutsu to bring his 3 genin to 3 wooden posts. The alarm clock he had set at the start went off when they got there. As he watched the different responses from the genin, Kakashi began, "Well, it seems that you 3 have failed the test." Sasuke was thinking deeply about something, Naruto was griping about being duped, and Hinata was staring at the ground. The genin's spirits rose when the speaker said, "I'll give you one more chance to get the bells since we have some more time to kill before I have to give my report. But first an hour lunch break, not for you though," was said, and the 3 genin were soon bound to a post. Kakashi concluded, "I'll be back in an hour, see you then," and left to find a restaurant. Sasuke and Hinata fought against the ropes in an attempt to escape their restraints. But Naruto was waiting for the Junin to be out of earshot as he watched Kakashi go. Naruto exclaimed, "It's all clear," after deciding he was far enough away. "Thanks for pointing out the obvious, Dobi," yelled Hinata. Naruto shot back, "I wasn't talking to you, princess." A few seconds later, another Naruto came out of the trees. As the top 2 students in their class, Sasuke and Hinata were both perplexed and cleverly assessed the situation by asking, "Huh?" After laughing at his teammates' perplexity, Naruto watched his clone sprint behind him while brandishing a kunai before waiting for the ropes to be severed. The clone went to free Sasuke as Naruto was rising. After assisting Sasuke in standing up, the Narutos turned to face Hinata, who was still strapped to a post. Hinata exclaimed, "Well, are you going to cut me free or not?" The Naruto clone remarked, "She'll probably be even more of a headache if we keep her tied up." Naruto sighed in agreement, and the clone also released Hinata, who wasn't thrilled about having to defend her freedom. In an attempt to divert Naruto's attention, Sasuke said, "Hey Naruto, did you bring snacks like I told you?" "What? Oh yeah, I got some ramen. Unfortunately the ceiling scroll can only fit 4 to-go ramens, but they're still nice and hot," said Naruto. The toy boys then produced their sealing scrolls and unlocked the contents. As he mentioned, Sasuke had about a dozen dango sticks, and Naruto had 4 Ichiraku ramens. Naruto glanced at Hinata before giving Sasuke a ramen and taking one for himself. "We may not get along, but if we're going to try to get a bell you're going to want to eat," stated Naruto. When Hinata started to say, "Like I would ever eat something as lowly as a euro," her stomach began to complain. With a sly smile, Naruto gave the tomato-faced Hyuga girl a bowl of ramen. Sasuke began sharing his thoughts about the test with his teammates while they were eating. "This test is weird. He's having Genin, who just got out of the academy, trying to get a little bell from a Junin. I don't think this test is meant for us to try to get the bells," Sasuke replied. This piqued the interest of both Hinata and Naruto, who both agreed with Sasuke's line of reasoning and questioned its direction. "I think the point of this test is teamwork. While we 3 might not be able to take him on one-on-one, I think if we work together we can at least get a bell." Naruto nodded at this as he finished his second bowl, even though the other 2 weren't done with their first. "That might work, so how do we go about getting the bell?" "Naruto can multiply, you have your ninjutsu, and I have my juken." Skeptical of her blonde teammate's utility, Hinata said, "I don't know how much good that'll do us when the Kakashi-sensei can wipe them out while reading his book." Sasuke smirked and turned to Naruto, saying, "Hey Naruto, next time don't hold back, let's show Kakashi-sensei what we're capable of." Naruto cautiously turned to face Hinata because he didn't feel confident enough to display his full strength in public. As a result, he was frequently beaten. "Look, she's going to see it eventually, same with Kakashi. If you are scared I'll walk you home afterwards, that is if you're chicken about it," Sasuke replied. "Why would Naruto be afraid to show me what he can do?" Hinata asked, perplexed. "It might help us pass this test, but it won't be much." "Naruto, you think I'm scared?" Sasuke yelled. Sasuke grinned and said, "Well, I'll have no choice but to call you chicken if you don't go all out like Kakashi said." Naruto grabbed a stick of dango and said, "Okay, but I don't need you to walk me home. I can handle myself perfectly well, as you know. So if Naruto goes all out, what type of plan can we make?" replied Hinata. As he consumed his 5th stick of dango, Sasuke began to explain to his 2 teammates what he had made while making fun of Naruto. The training field was exactly as Kakashi had left it when he returned, with all 3 of his genin tied to a post and wearing dejected little faces. Kakashi laughed when he considered how easy this test was in reality but how difficult they made it. "Now I will give you only an hour to get the bells. Once I finish talking you can start. Also, like I said earlier, if you don't come at me with the intent to kill you will fail," Kakashi said, standing in front of the genin, before turning to face Naruto. "You may begin." All 3 of the genin poofed into smoke clouds after they were informed that they could start. At this, Kakashi's 6th sense kicked in and his eye widened. Kakashi barely missed a kick meant for his head as he ducked. He was shocked to see that Naruto was his opponent when he turned to face him. "I knew he wasn't going all out, but this is comparable to the speed of a high-level chunin," Kakashi thought. The chapter was getting to a good place, and I guess I can't finish it just yet. At first, Kakashi was on the defensive because he was still getting used to Naruto's apparent speed boost. Sasuke and Hinata were observing from a nearby tree. Hinata could see everything because she had her Byakugan turned on. Since when was he so quick? Even I struggle to keep up with Kiba's speed, and he's faster, Hinata thought, beginning to make sense of what her father and uncle had discussed the night before. Sasuke gestured for Hinata to take a position after noticing that the battle was shifting. Hinata gave a nod, reserving her inquiries for the blonde. At first, Naruto managed to stay on the attack, but the more experienced Junin gradually overtook him. Naruto began to retreat toward the tree line, treeing to take the battle to where Sasuke and Hinata were hiding after realizing how important his role in the plan was. Kakashi observed Naruto's movements but let himself be captivated by his curiosity to find out what was in store for him. While waiting for Kakashi to take his place, Sasuke crouched in a tree branch. When Naruto had sufficiently retreated, Sasuke leapt from the tree, and the 2 of them yelled, "Sexy no jutsu," simultaneously, filling the air with smoke. A moment later, Kakashi's gaze glazed over at the 2 women in front of him, both of whom were wearing very little clothing. Hinata wasted no time in distracting Kakashi by leaping from her hiding place and pretending to be a rock on the ground. She then struck Kakashi's chakra points enough to temporarily paralyze him. Kakashi felt his chakra being shut off, and his eye went from glassy to terrified. Kakashi poofed into a cloud of smoke as he fell to the ground. Well done, if I had been a Chunin, I would have had no chance at escaping, said the real Kakashi as he emerged from the trees. Disappointed that their plan had failed, the Genin cast a downward glance. Under the mask, Kakashi smiled and said, I guess all I can say to you now is you pass. A brief period of silence was broken by Naruto's exclamation, yes. We did it, as he performed an odd dance in celebration. Sasuke grinned, while Hinata's face was expressionless. Sasuke's perspiration dropped. Hinata held back a laugh, and Kakashi waited for Naruto to stop dancing before continuing. Sasuke and Naruto were unaware of it because of the Hyuga's capacity to conceal emotion, but Kakashi detected the brief curvature of Hinata's mouth. It will be fascinating to observe in the future, Kakashi thought. Okay, tomorrow meet at the South Side Bridge, same time, and we'll be sparring so I can assess your abilities, strengths, weaknesses, the usual stuff, Kakashi said. The lazy Junin then went off to do whatever it is that a lazy, perverted Junin does. The air suddenly became colder after Sensei left. Hinata asked, Suayuro, which one of you idiots created that jutsu used to distract Kakashi? In a voice that threatened to harm the offender severely. Sasuke pointed to Naruto and said, he made up the jutsu, before sprinting as fast as he could. The two boys stiffened and slowly turned to face their teammate, thinking rapidly. With a horrified expression, Naruto asked his best friend, why would you tell her that? So it was you Naruto Ayuro, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that filth like you would make such a thing. You'll be hoping you were never born when I'm through, replied Hinata. Naruto began to run, but even at his fastest pace, it appeared that a woman who was trying to harm a pervert had acquired divine abilities, and he was caught by Hinata before he could leave the training area. His cries were audible from Konoha's other side. Kami saw Hinata's anger directed at the poor boy. The shinobi god said, he may not be a pervert, but that jutsu qualifies for me giving her a part of my power. I just hope she doesn't overdo it. At that point, Kami recoiled from Hinata's latest blow to Naruto. Naruto was yawning as he strolled through one of Konoha's many retail areas. After realizing that his sensei would most likely be late anyhow, he hurried to leave after waking up in order to avoid missing his team training. Right now, it was 9:23, and not many people were out. It was Sunday. On Sundays, a mob usually forms. People would become enraged with him for whatever reason, and they would begin to chase him around the village while hurling foul epithets and displaying intense anger. The mobs had somewhat subsided since he founded the academy. It used to happen every week, but now it only happened once a month, usually on a Sunday. It was uncommon to see a ninja joining the mob since he began attending the academy. Only a few occasional low-level chunins. Naruto saw that he was being followed as he rounded the corner. He went on until he came to an ally, pretending Naruto didn't notice. After disappearing from view, Naruto leapt to the rooftops and sought out the person pursuing him. Naruto noticed a young boy running toward the alley while wearing a long scarf and some kind of helmet as he looked into the street. What are you doing following me? Naruto asked the boy as he landed behind him. You knew I was following you? I thought I was being really stealthy, the boy said, flinching and turning around. The fact that this boy believed he was being stealthy when even a genin who had just graduated from the academy could see him made Naruto perspire. Naruto said, Who are you anyways? I am Konohamaru Sarutobi. I'm going to become the strongest Hokage ever. The boy said with a sly smile and a laugh. Naruto grinned because the boy's dreams mirrored his own. Wait, Sarutobi? Like Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage? Replied Naruto. After realizing his error, Konohamaru covered his mouth in the hopes that Naruto wouldn't hear him say, yes. And if I can beat the Hokage, I will be the strongest in the village. I heard you have a jutsu that was able to take out Gigi. Regretfully for Konohamaru, Naruto could clearly hear it because he was so noisy. Naruto exclaimed, Wait, you're the Hokage's grandson? Naruto was perplexed by Konohamaru's deflating and nodding. Why would he be so unhappy that his grandfather was the Hokage? Why are you so sad about it? Wouldn't it be cool to have your grandfather being Hokage? Replied Naruto. Konohamaru murmured, You'd think, but because of that, people always call me honorable grandson. Nobody sees me as Konohamaru, they just see the grandson of their beloved Hokage. That's why you need to show me the jutsu so I can defeat him, and then people will see me as Konohamaru and not the honorable grandson. Naruto was taken back from this. Hearing about someone who had too much respect was strange for a child who had spent his entire life trying to earn respect. Alright, I'll tell you, but you have to promise not to use it in front of any girls. told Naruto. Konohamaru, unaware of the true nature of the jutsu, asked, why? He knew that his grandfather was somewhat of a pervert, so he knew that the jutsu would work, but he had also witnessed what had happened to some of the unfortunate souls who had been caught peeping at the hot springs, so he agreed with Naruto's conditions. Well, it only works on perverts. Sue, if you don't want a beating afterwards, heed my warning. Alright, my team and I have to meet up right now, but tomorrow at 7 AM, you can meet me at Training Field 3. Naruto declared, I will teach the anti-perv ways there. Konohamaru applauded, yes. I'll get strong now and defeat Gigi. After that, Naruto went to meet his team, and Konohamaru fled to find a playmate. It was 10:17 when he got there, and Hinata was upset that he had been late. Where were you? You're coming almost an hour late, even though Kakashi-sensei said it was 9:30. Well, seeing as our sensei is lazy as Anara, I decided to sleep in, said Naruto, and adopting his habits won't help any of us. Hinata had arrived at precisely 9:30 and then waited for her teammates and sensei to arrive. Sasuke had arrived a few minutes later and had resumed practicing his control over his fire element. At least you could try to be decent. I've been trying to be respectable my entire life and look where that got me, Naruto said, sitting down next to Sasuke, who had been silent the entire time. I've been trying to be respectable my entire life and look where that got me. Hinata had no response to this. She didn't understand his words and didn't want to possibly dig herself into a deeper hole. With nothing to say, Hinata returned to studying her scroll. As he recovered from the torture he had received from Hinata, Naruto had been able to master the technique of writing seals the night before thanks to his clones. After laying out his sealing supplies, Naruto began creating a storage seal on a scroll, and when he was done, he smiled because this time the scroll wouldn't break after a few uses. Although he would need to strengthen the seal occasionally, this was a significant improvement over his previous attempts. Choosing to begin a new seal, Naruto began creating a weight seal. He had read that the seal could be used for physical training, and he had committed the seal's design to memory. While she had some scrolls about controlling her water chakra, Hinata pulled out a scroll for basic medical ninjutsu. With her advanced chakra control, Hinata found the exercises to be relatively easy, and although she didn't want to become a medical nin, she thought knowing some first aid would be useful if she or her teammates had been injured. At the moment, she could heal small cuts, but that was all. Hinata began looking for something to study while waiting for their sensei after noticing that her teammates had begun studying more advanced skills. When Kakashi eventually arrived at 11:20, he was pleased to see that all three of his genin had begun practicing more complex arts. As he explained that he had become lost on the path of life, he was met with 3 irritated looks from his genin. So for today's training I'll be assessing your individual skills. We'll start with chakra control and then chakra reserves, Kakashi said. We will then engage in sparring matches. I also need a list of all the ninjutsu, genjutsu, or fuinjutsu you know. The 3 genin nodded, and Kakashi pulled out a clipboard with a pen and paper. As they made their way to the training ground, they wrote down their jutsu. Sasuke took the clipboard first, writing down some fire jutsu he knew, along with a low-level genjutsu. Naruto wrote down the shadow clone jutsu, the storage seal, and the weight seal. Hinata wrote down 2 low-level water jutsu she knew, and basic medical ninjutsu. In Training Ground 7, taking the clipboard back, Kakashi then handed out tiny pieces of paper. Handing one to each of his genin, he then explained that the paper is made from a special tree, and helps determine a person's chakra nature. He then went to explain how the paper will react to chakra being put into it. He also explained how the paper might have multiple reactions for someone with multiple chakra natures and how the chakra nature means that the person finds that element easier to use than others, but it is still possible to use other elements that aren't your original chakra nature. To demonstrate, Kakashi channeled some chakra into a piece of paper, causing it to crumple. I find lightning jutsu easiest to learn, but I can still use fire, water, and earth jutsu too. It's just harder for me, Kakashi finished. Going one at a time, Sasuke was first. His paper crumpled and then caught on fire. Taking note, Kakashi then moved on to Hinata. Her paper started to fall apart from too much water. Kakashi also took note of this, impressed by the girl's aptitude for water. When Naruto channeled his chakra into the paper, several reactions occurred. First the paper crumpled, then it split in half, and before the halves could leave his fingers the paper turned to dust. Kakashi's eye widened. He has 3 chakra natures? It's rare for someone to have 2 like Sasuke, but this. After writing down Naruto's chakra natures quickly, Kakashi took out what appeared to be a laser pointer and sealed the clipboard in a scroll. This device can measure the chakra reserves and chakra control someone has, Kakashi explained. The longer the laser the more chakra, the more dense the laser the more control, explained Kakashi. He then walked over to a nearby tree and channeled chakra into the device. A beam of chakra grew from the end to the device and grew to about 3 feet. Kakashi then slashed at the tree and slashed at it. The slash only went in about 2 feet though. Those with good control can have the entire beam cut into the tree, said Kakashi. He then handed the device to Hinata. Channeling chakra, Hinata's beam came to about 1.5 feet, above average for a genin. Then she walked over to the same tree and slashed. A cut running 1.25 feet deep was found. Naruto was next and had a beam 10 feet long, much to the surprise of his team. However, when he went to cut the tree, his beam only cut in about 8 inches. Hinata smirked and Naruto slouched over in disappointment. Handing the device to Sasuke, Naruto sat on the ground pouting. Sasuke's beam had been about 2.25 feet and had made a cut 1.5 feet deep. Happy with the results, Kakashi told the genin what the pair-ups for taijutsu would be. It would start Hinata versus Sasuke, and then Hinata versus Naruto, finishing with Sasuke versus Naruto. Sasuke and Hinata took their positions and waited for Kakashi to begin the spar. When Kakashi finished saying, "Begin," Hinata charged at Sasuke, giving him only a second to react. Sasuke ducked the first blow Hinata threw out before he had to jump backwards to avoid being hit by another. Taking his stance again, Sasuke met Hinata's charge and the two clashed. Sasuke used a variety of punches and kicks to try to knock Hinata off balance, but the Hyuga girl didn't appear to be resisting his attacks very much. Trying something different, Sasuke leapt into the air and flipped, sticking his right foot out to smash it into Hinata. When Hinata saw his attack, she ducked, knowing that she couldn't take the full force of it. Activating her Byakugan, Hinata got ready to end this match quickly. Her vision turned black and white, and she saw Sasuke's chakra points and went into the Juken stance. Then, Hinata launched her attack, closing the chakra points in his right arm faster than Sasuke could blink. Sasuke realized this and tried to back up, but Hinata continued to apply pressure, closing off chakra points, and within 11 more seconds, he was on the ground, unable to move, while Hinata stood calmly above him. Winner, Hinata. After Hinata had reopened his chakra points, Kakashi assisted his student in leaving the field, saying, "Next up is Naruto versus Hinata." As Naruto moved to stand across from her, Hinata walked over to where she had begun the previous spar and said, "I'm going to enjoy kicking your ass, Naruto Uzumaki." With a smirk on her face, Hinata said, "Please understand that this is very personal." "Oh yeah? Well, we'll just see about that, princess," Naruto said with a cheeky grin. Well, this could be either amazing or a total letdown on Naruto's part, Kakashi thought. Start. Both opponents remained in their stances, unlike the last match. Naruto had adopted the academy stance that Sasuke had helped him correct after the teachers had taught it to him incorrectly. Naruto became agitated and blitzed Hinata, who, thanks to her taijutsu training since she was 4 years old, was able to block the punch that Naruto had aimed at her head. As the battle continued, Naruto continued to throw punches and kicks, but since Hinata was familiar with the style and it wasn't very good, she was able to block or dodge everything. After realizing that his actions were not having much of an impact on the Hyuga, Naruto tried something he had read about at the library. Crouching low, he went to sweep Hinata's feet, but Hinata jumped to avoid being knocked off balance. Using her immobility, Naruto stopped the spin and used his hands to push off the ground. With his speed and Hinata in the air, she coughed and took a double kick to the gut, which sent her flying into the air. After readjusting, she landed on her feet, embracing her stomach. "So, princess, when are you going to kick my ass?" Naruto grinned. He emphasized the final word, taunting Hinata, who had taken a knee and had a shadow over her eyes. "Right a euro now," Hinata said, just loud enough for Naruto to hear, and then she blitzed him, using chakra to increase her speed. Using her Byakugan, Hinata prepared a Juken strike, stopping right in front of Naruto, her arms a blur. In a matter of seconds, Naruto had enough chakra points closed to completely paralyze another person. With the final blow, he sent Naruto flying backwards, crashing into a tree, and a cloud of dust formed on impact. Hinata grinned, "Serves you right, Uzumaki." Ooh. Hinata froze. How is he speaking? That attack would have paralyzed his entire body, including his tongue. Naruto stumbled out of the dust cloud, aching all over and unable to form chakra. Damn, that hurt. Hinata frowned and went back to her Juken stance, preparing to finish the battle with the next blow. Naruto shouted, dusting himself off and resuming his stance. The tree behind him had an imprint of Naruto on it and had begun to break. Sasuke and Kakashi were on the sidelines, stunned by what had just transpired. Neither had anticipated Hinata's level of power, and even more unexpectedly, Naruto managed to repel an attack that would have eliminated them tenfold. Impatient once more, Naruto charged Hinata, but this time he did it more slowly, allowing Hinata to sidestep his kick and grab him by the collar due to Naruto's inability to use his full speed at the moment. Pulling him over her head, Hinata slammed the blonde into the ground and then pulled one of his arms back, while putting a knee into his back. In recognition of his defeat, Naruto gave up, knowing he still had to battle Sasuke. After Kakashi recovered from his shock first and declared Hinata the winner, Sasuke shook his head, managed to shake off his shock, and got up from his position, switching places with Hinata before assuming his fighting stance. Hinata shivered at the thought of a day of training with Guy, even though she didn't want to, after Kakashi-sensei threatened to release Naruto's chakra points. She had heard a lot about her cousin sensei and hoped to stay away from him as much as possible. Naruto and Sasuke were perplexed by this, asking themselves, what's so bad about a day of training with some Junin? Kakashi started the battle when everyone was ready. Since the two had trained together during the academy, they had an even match until Sasuke's more advanced technique finally gave him an opening, and Sasuke used it to slam a sidekick into Naruto's stomach. Naruto was once again sent into a tree, but this time it wasn't as impressive because he just bounced off the tree instead of denting it. Still recovering from his previous match, Naruto struggled to get to his feet, and Sasuke started a barrage of kicks and punches aimed at him. After he was forced to block and dodge, Sasuke suddenly crouched down and swept Naruto's legs out from under him. Before Naruto hit the ground, Sasuke chopped the back of his neck, causing him to pass out. After dragging Naruto to his sensei and teammate, Sasuke declared, "Sasuke is the winner." The fight had lasted 30 minutes, and Kakashi was relieved that it was finally over. "Well done team, you all show promise," he said. "We will meet at the same location and time every time, unless I specify otherwise, for our first mission tomorrow." The two genin who were conscious nodded. "Well, that's it, I'll be analyzing my notes on each of you and will try to find exercises and jutsu that would work best for you," Kakashi said after completing his necessary statement. Then, for 2 reasons, he left his genin to visit the library. He could study jutsu and chakra exercises for the first reason, and he could read his book more for the second. Sasuke and Hinata watched Kakashi leave. Both of them had plenty of free time as it was around 3 in the afternoon. "So, would you like to go get something to eat with me and Naruto?" replied Sasuke. "Like I would ever willingly eat with that idiot. I need to head home and take care of some clan duties and chores." It wasn't a complete fabrication. Hinata had a few tasks to complete, but she still had time to eat before starting the chores. She simply didn't want to be around Naruto any longer. The only person outside of her family who seemed to elicit any emotion from her. Sasuke did not press the issue as he observed Hinata leaving him with Naruto. Sasuke grinned as he glanced at his friend, knowing exactly what to say to wake him up. "Hey Naruto, you up for ramen?" Naruto was up and running to Ichiraku's in an instant. Before Naruto had begun going for tenths, Sasuke rushed to the ramen stop, laughing at his friend's antics. Training Field 3 on the following day. "No, you're not doing it right. You need more curves and the face is terrible." Even though Konohamaru had advanced remarkably for his age in the hour that Naruto had been teaching him the anti-perv techniques, he was still unable to perform the jutsu correctly. Konohamaru was currently hanged into a girl with a face that resembled Notre Dame's hunchback. It was difficult without a real girl, even though he had some magazine clippings and Naruto's jutsu to work from. Naruto was so proud of his students' rapid learning that he had contemplated taking Konohamaru to the hot springs, but changed his mind after almost getting caught the last time he was practicing the jutsu. Konohamaru frowned, made another attempt, and examined the magazine clippings Naruto had brought. This time, he had fixed the face to make it appear like a real girl and transformed into a slightly curvy girl. Naruto exclaimed, "Yes, you did it, with pride, haha. Now I'll be able to take down Gigi and become Hokage," exclaimed Konohamaru, unhedging. "Hold on, 2 problems. 1. You need to practice more so the jutsu is a knockout to any pervert. That last one was good, but still needs work. Second problem, Hokage isn't about being the strongest in the village. It's about protecting the village. To be strong means that you have something or someone to protect, and that's what you use your strength for. A Hokage protects an entire village. That's why our Gigi is so strong, Naruto clarified. Those words caused Konohamaru to recant. His grandfather's role had never occurred to him in that context. Konohamaru inquired, so who do you use your strength to protect? In an attempt to learn more. Naruto responded, well, there's my friend Sasuke, Gigi, Old Man Tucci, Ayame-chan. And I also guess Kakashi-sensei and Hinata-san. Although he thought the Hyuga was a bitch, he had to protect her if they were ever going to collaborate. Konohamaru pondered these words for a long time. He had to protect whom? Uncle Asuma, Gigi, Ka-san, and... well, who else? He didn't really have any friends because Konohamaru was frequently viewed as a means of gaining favor in his class. He was treated as the honorable grandson by only 3 other students in his class. After determining that Konohamaru had understood what he had said, Naruto chose to leave. Well, I think that's enough for today. I'm going to head off to meet up with my team. See you around, Konohamaru. Breaking out of his reverie, Konohamaru waved goodbye. Thanks, Naruto. Naruto exclaimed, no problem, I had fun, Konohamaru. Then, smiling, he walked away with his hands behind his head. Konohamaru thought, thank you, Naruto, for seeing me for who I am, instead of who my grandfather is. After noticing that Naruto had left the field, Konohamaru set out to locate the students from his class that he believed might be his friends, but then he had a flashback. Hold on, Naruto called Gigi, but why? Since Naruto had trained with Konohamaru early, he had approximately 45 minutes before his teammates were supposed to arrive, so he arrived at the bridge before both of them. Naruto chose to try the weight seal he had been studying after settling down on the bridge. Naruto proceeded to write the new seal on his other arm after removing his pen and sealing ink from his left forearm. Naruto completed the seal by directing a small amount of chakra into it and creating the ram sign. If someone else had tried to start the seal with a small amount of chakra, they would have gained an additional 20 to 25 pounds. But Naruto had gained an additional 130 pounds due to his immense chakra reserves. Naruto struggled to stand and performed some exercises to adjust to the increased weight. Naruto's speed dropped to an average genin after he adapted to the weight, and he discovered that throwing shuriken and kunai was more exhausting because his arm was now twice as heavy as it was before. Naruto practiced activating and deactivating the seal after feeling satisfied with his work. Naruto began creating tags with the weight seal on them after realizing he still had 15 minutes left, which would allow him to incapacitate his opponent with a single blow in combat. When Hinata returned at precisely 9:30, she was shocked to see Naruto already there, creating tags. She went to the railing and pulled out her water jutsu scroll, not wanting to strike up a conversation. She had begun training in the art of water gun jutsu. She was able to condense water on the tip of her finger and then shoot it out quickly enough to possibly pierce steel thanks to it. Hinata formed the hand signals, then fired the water while pointing to the creek below. Her finger only produced a feeble stream of water. Hinata tried again after canceling the jutsu. Sasuke had arrived at around 10:15 today, which was late. I came across a little old lady who needed help with her groceries, was his response when asked where he had been. You're supposed to be the normal one, Hinata sighed, pinching her nose. All 3 were now waiting for their sensei while studying their different jutsu. Kakashi yawned, attempting to shake off his fatigue. He decided to get ready to meet his team after realizing it was already 11 when he woke up. He saw Anko wave him into a dango restaurant as he was walking. He walked to see what his fellow Junin wanted, shrugging his shoulders. Kakashi chose to playfully ask her, so how's Iruka been? As they sat down at the table, her face was slightly flushed. Why would I know what he's been up to? Anko asked uneasily. After they began dating, she and Iruka decided to keep it a secret until things became serious. Kakashi stopped to further torment Anko. Well, I was walking to Iruka's the other night to ask about some of my genin. All thaw a euro, she said. When I arrived at the door, I heard what sounded like a 2-person party inside. Not one to ruin the fun, I decided to leave and ask later. Her face had lost all of its color. Her relationship with the academy teacher had been discovered. She felt so free with Iruka, even though she cursed herself for being so loud. After laughing at her response, Kakashi pretended not to notice and asked, now that that's over, what is it you wanted to talk to me about? Anko had a kunai up to Kakashi's throat after being startled out of her reverie and moving more quickly than a Sharingan could see. In a whisper, Anko threatened, if you tell anyone, I'll make sure to give you the most painful and slow death I can imagine. Kakashi pledged to protect her secret while raising his hands in surrender. Anko sat down again and asked what she had been planning to do when she had called him over. Now, would you like some dango? Kakashi took one of the numerous dango sticks in front of her and said, sure. Anko swiftly reached for her camera, which she had concealed beneath the table, and pointed it at Kakashi. What's that for? Asked Kakashi. Anko actually wanted to take a picture of what was behind the mask he always wore. Hey, I just want to make sure I have up-to-date photos of all my friends. This is a perfect photo opportunity. She intended to claim the 5,000 Ryo reward that was offered for such a picture. With a shrug, Kakashi raised the stick to his lips. Just as he was ready to remove his mask, he paused and squinted to try to see what was behind Anko. Kakashi yelled, "Hey, is that Iruka over there? Hey, Iruka, come on over." Anko turned around for a split second to check if it was really Iruka and blushed. She was lucky that it wasn't. When she turned back to face Kakashi, he was holding an empty stick and using a napkin to dab at the area where his mouth would be beneath the mask, seemingly to remove any food particles. Well, that was delicious. Now if you excuse me, I have to see my genin now. It was nice seeing you, Anko. Waving goodbye, Kakashi left. When Anko realized she had lost the opportunity to take a photo of the notorious face of Kakashi Hitaki, she slammed her face against the table. At last, Hinata had perfected the art of water gun jutsu. However, the jutsu changed from being merely a water squirt to resembling a laser. Water would continue to flow from her finger unless she stopped the jutsu. After deciding to question Kakashi's sensei about it, she proceeded to a jutsu that allowed the caster to call forth a rain cloud. Before Sasuke arrived, Naruto had run out of tags and had begun practicing chakra control techniques. Right now, he was holding a kunai on his finger, touching nothing but the blade's point. The kunai had to remain upright during this exercise, and the user had to strengthen their finger's skin to prevent the kunai from piercing it. Naruto's forehead was sweating, and although he could defend himself from the blade with ease, the kunai would continue to fall after a short while. Sasuke made the decision to begin practicing his lightning chakra nature and brought along a stack of leaves to try to crinkle them. In most cases, however, the leaves would catch fire. Sasuke was interested in the cause of the one life that vanished in a white flash, even though it wasn't what he was aiming for. He also intended to later ask Kakashi-sensei for assistance. Kakashi was looking down on his genins from one of the beams that went over the bridge. It appears that Naruto has nothing to offer in the way of elemental jutsu. While Sasuke is focusing on his other element, what was that flash of white? Perhaps he can combine his two elements. I'll have to check it out at the library later. For not using shadow clones, Hinata is making incredible progress. Her ability to shoot a steady stream of water was unheard of since the Nidaime. Could she possibly be as skilled in water jutsu as he was, or better? His team undoubtedly appeared to be made up of young people with extraordinary potential. If only they would all get along now. Sasuke appears to be tolerated by Hinata, but as soon as Naruto opens his mouth, it seems as though he has killed her dog. I'm hoping these lower-level missions will help things go more smoothly. Kakashi dropped in the midst of the three genin after finishing his thoughts. Sorry, but a black cat crossed my path and I had to take the long way around. Sasuke let out a sigh. Naruto scoffed at the weak justification. Hinata chose to keep a straight face, and she mentally noted that she would confront Kakashi later. Now, let's get going. Don't want to be late for our first mission, Kakashi said, disregarding the genin's responses. Then, with a smile on his face, Kakashi left for the Hokage's office. With a groan, Naruto walked slowly to meet his sensei. With a frown, Sasuke stuffed his hands in his pockets and went after them. Though Hinata didn't express any physical displeasure, she had begun hurling profanities in her mind that were potent enough to cause Orochimaru to flush. When the team arrived at the Hokage's office, the third Hokage welcomed them with a warm smile. "Gigi. How have you been?" Naruto said with a smile spreading across his face. This surprised Hinata, who thought, wait, did he just call the Hokage Gigi? Sasuke, who had heard Naruto's nickname for the Hokage multiple times and was aware that Naruto wasn't the Hokage's grandchild, was unfazed by Kakashi's raised eyebrow. Even though it was subtle, Hiruzen chose to explain after noticing Hinata's eyes slightly widen. I've been very well, Naruto. For those of you who don't know, Naruto is not my grandchild, however, I helped him when he was younger and gained the nickname Gigi because of it. Though she nodded in comprehension, Hinata found the Hokage's words perplexing. What would have required him to assist Naruto? Today's mission is to catch the fire daimyo's wife's cat, Mr. Cuddlekins V. At this Kakashi laughed. He had to complete a D-rank mission as well. It was customary for every Genin team to find the fire daimyo's wife's cat. Naturally, though, it had been the fourth when he had done it. Naruto was criticized because he frequently wandered around Konoha and saw many of the D-rank missions that Genin had encountered. The most challenging mission was chasing the notorious Mr. Cuddlekins, even though it had been the most entertaining to watch. He had even heard rumors that it had been promoted to a low-level C-rank mission, but that was only hearsay. Unaware of the mission's purpose, Sasuke and Hinata grew even more suspicious and intrigued after witnessing their sensei and teammates' reactions. It's simply locating a misplaced feline. How difficult is that? They both thought. 5 hours later. What on earth is this cat? Hinata thought. It was the 17th time she and Naruto had tried to catch the cat. The cat's escape was made possible by Hinata and Naruto's separate schemes and their interference with one another whenever the other was about to succeed. Both she and Naruto were covered in dirt and had numerous scratches. Naturally, the scratches were short-lived due to Naruto's inhuman regeneration rate and Hinata's medical jutsu. Around the 14th, Sasuke had departed, claiming to have some helpful items at home. Since the Uchiha hadn't returned after 14 minutes, Hinata was beginning to grow impatient with him. "Don't worry, once Sasuke gets back this cat will be easier to catch than you in a bad mood," was Naruto's response when she asked him, briefly putting aside her dislike of the boy. For the final comment, Naruto was given a slap across the stomach. In the hopes that her teammate wouldn't ruin things again, Hinata was currently chasing the cat into a dead-end alley. Naruto had decided to support the Hyuga for any surprises the cat might have in store because he was sick of chasing the cat and didn't want to outdo her. Hinata saw that Naruto appeared to have finally regained consciousness and was concentrating on catching the cat. Mr. Cuddlekins tried to run out of the alley and jump off the wall. Unfortunately for the cat, Hinata could react to counter the cat's speed because she was trained in close combat. Hinata struggled to hold the cat in her arms as she left the alley, forcing Naruto to follow her as she made her way back to the Hokage's office. As they were halfway there, Mr. Cuddlekins bit Hinata, which caused her to relax her hold on him and let him go. Hinata frowned and tended to her hand. "That cat will know hell on earth when I get him." This made Naruto shudder, and he hoped they would catch the cat quickly, or else he might unintentionally do something to incite that rage against him. He followed the furious Hyuga after the cat in silence. They didn't run very far, though, because Sasuke was waiting for them at the corner, holding the demonic cat in his arms with composure. Hinata raised an arm in preparation for a Juken strike and said, "Thank you for catching it, Sasuke. Now I can thank that demon for biting me earlier. If you touch this cat, I will place you under so many genjutsus, you won't know fantasy from reality." Sasuke's response caused her to freeze. The killing intent he released with his words was what froze the Hyuga, not what he said. Hinata let her hands drop to her sides and allowed Sasuke to lead the way to the Hokage's office, not testing the Uchiha's threat. Naruto had almost urinated in fear and was still digesting the scene he had just seen. Naruto reluctantly followed his teammates, maintaining a 10-foot distance, after finally emerging from his shock. Kakashi, who had fallen next to Sasuke and was silently laughing at the entire situation, questioned how he managed to subdue Mr. Cuddlekins. The Uchiha were close friends with a ninja cat clan outside of Konoha. Their hideout is one of our storage houses. We learned long ago that using a plant called catnip, cats become more relaxed. Kakashi was interested in this catnip plant and thought that this mission would be considered easy work if the future Genin knew about it. I will need to ensure that Sasuke doesn't simply tell anyone about it. Team 7 was met at the office by a huge woman who immediately took the poor cat in her arms and gave it such a strong hug that it sounded like bones breaking. Sasuke winced at this, but he refrained from speaking so as not to offend the fire daimyo's wife. The team turned to the Hokage after the fire daimyo's wife gave a dramatic farewell. Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata were all attempting to remove a lipstick stain from their cheeks. The third Hokage said, "Well team, here is your payment, 1 million ryo each. Now don't spend your money all in one place." Being from one of the wealthiest clans in Konoha, Hinata was unaffected by the money. But this was only a D-rank mission, so why does it pay so much? Sasuke had asked, raising an eyebrow at the amount. The fire daimyo's wife treasures her cat. To regain such a treasure, she is willing to pay the village what some make in a year, said the Hokage. Naruto had never had so much money at once, and he was swooning over it. The quantity of food I could purchase, and for at least 3 months, my rent would be paid. And I have no idea how much ramen I could consume. The Hokage concluded, "You are dismissed, I'll see you when you come for your next mission." Hinata mentally flinched at the display. hoping they would be permitted to depart soon so she could escape that disgusting sight. After Team 7 left the office, Hinata headed straight home in the hopes of taking a bath and then unwinding. Since Kakashi didn't participate in the capture of Mr. Cuddlekins, he had no reason to go home at this time, so he opened his book and began to wander the streets of Konoha, saying things like, "It's only 5 o'clock, want to get some food?" Sasuke smirked and nodded, knowing that they would visit Tenrai Dango afterwards. "Only if we have ramen," Naruto said. The friends then went off to treat themselves to completing their first mission. After 2 months. Hurry up, Gigi, isn't a C-rank mission possible? The Hokage refused to give Naruto a C-rank mission, despite Naruto's solitary efforts to convince him to do so. "Naruto, I can't just give a fresh team of Genin a C-rank mission," the Hokage said. At this point, Naruto sagged and turned to leave, but he realized what the Hokage had said. "So if Kakashi says we're ready, then he'll have to give us a C-rank mission." Naruto hurried off to find his sensei. "If Kakashi thinks you're ready, then I'll reconsider, but at the moment my answer is no." When Naruto discovered his sensei at an Uchiha Paradise fan club meeting, he pulled him outside and explained the situation to him. Kakashi nodded, understanding that his team could manage a low-level C rank. He also promised to ask the Hokage for one the next time he could attend the meeting. The following day the Hokage was interrupted by Kakashi, who said, "Actually Hokage-sama, I believe my team is ready to take a C rank mission." Hiruzen arched an eyebrow at this, asking if the other team members have the same opinion. "Today Team 7 you will be cleaning the gutters of Euro." "Yes Hokage same. We believe we are ready to take a C-rank mission," said Hinata, echoing the thoughts of the three of them as Naruto nodded his head repeatedly and Sasuke nodded slightly in agreement. The Hokage explained, "Okay then, Team 7, your mission will be to escort a bridge builder to the Land of Waves, just to protect from any bandits or dangerous animals according to the client." Naruto cheered. Sasuke and Kakashi smiled slightly, and Hinata grinned, pleased to have been given a C-rank mission. Hiruzen sat back into his chair with a slight smile, knowing that he needed to prepare when he saw Naruto running out of the office yesterday, so he had already prepared a mission. 5 minutes later, an elderly man carrying a bottle of sake entered the room looking inebriated. "So these are the brats that are going to escort me? A tiny princess, an emo child, and a blonde pipsqueak?" "Yes, Tazuna, this is the team that will escort to the Land of Waves, exactly what you paid for," the Hokage said. I'll make do. Now we leave in 2 hours, I need to get back as soon as possible." Team 7 gave him icy looks, but the man didn't seem to mind because no one could tell he didn't respect them or the alcohol. "You whippersnappers had better get packing, or I'll be abandoning you." After finishing, Tazuna left the room to wait for them by the gate. The Genins realized that time was running out and hurried off to pack. Hiruzen chuckled, recalling his own Genin days, and Kakashi shunshined away to pack after a lengthy silence. "Well you heard him, pack now or forever be miserable on the mission," Kakashi said. With little to pack, Naruto arrived at the gates slowly, taking in the sights of Konoha one last time before departing for at least a week, based on his research, which he had obtained from his clones at the library, where he conveniently read a map and estimated how long it would take to get to locations at both civilian and ninja speeds. "Oh Kami, how'd I get out of this, Hey Hyuga-sama?" Naruto froze as he turned the corner and saw Heishi Hyuga. This was Hinata's father, and it was no secret that he and the girl didn't get along. How are things going? Naruto Uzumaki, I have heard much of you from my daughter Ayuro." Naruto was already bidding farewell to the people in his life in silence, while Heishi stayed silent and assessed the boy while he was perspiring. "And it had been made clear to me that you and my daughter don't get along." Naruto was perplexed by this and said, "Wait, you want me to forgive her? I hope you can forgive my daughter for her attitude." The Hyuga head said, "Yes, I know she's made many rude and hurtful comments to you, and I hope you can look past that." He had never been asked for his forgiveness, so it was different. "All right, but could I please have the opportunity to find out why I should pardon her?" Naruto asked carefully. While he didn't care for the subject, he had done a little reading in manners. Having a Hyuga as a teammate, it was now paying off. Heishi smirked. "Seems like he's learned a little about how to talk properly." "Very well. At a very young age, Hinata lost her mother. She has since stopped making friends because losing her was like losing a piece of herself. My wife, Hitomi, was still living. She was my daughter's best friend and biggest supporter. She feared going through that pain again because of the pain of losing her. I hope you can understand why she behaves in this manner." Naruto listened intently to everything Hitomi said, and he didn't forget a word. He was silent for a minute after Heishi finished, and when he spoke again, he wanted to confirm that he had heard correctly. Heishi-sama, your wife was Hitomi Hyuga, right? The same Hitomi who took me to the hospital all those years ago and passed away soon after. Heishi nodded, and Naruto went on. Heishi nodded once more. As he stood up, Naruto bowed to Heishi and said, I deeply apologize for treating your daughter the way I did. Naruto could not believe he had been so rude to the daughter of the person who was the closest he had ever been to a mother and the only person who showed concern for him aside from the Hokage and Ichiraku staff. There is no need to apologize, Heishi said, expressing surprise and a lack of understanding about what had caused the boy to react in this way. Hitomi must have really touched Naruto in the little amount of time she met with him, he said, without showing it. Although I acknowledge that Hinata can be challenging at times, please know that she hardly ever displayed emotion prior to meeting you. She opened up once more after you met her. That is not a question. She becomes irritated, embarrassed, and furious with you. Her shell is beginning to crack, though, and I'm hoping that with your assistance, it will break entirely. After giving Naruto time to process this information, Heishi went on to reveal the true reason for his visit. I now beg you, Naruto Uzumaki, to keep my daughter safe while on the mission. Despite her strength, she will fail because of her pride. Following a few seconds, Naruto replied, yes, I will protect her. Heishi gave the boy a brief smile, which is an uncommon display of emotion outside the compound, and then left to handle the many clan matters that awaited him. Be warned, Uzumaki, the amount of damage Hinata returns with, I will personally deal double the amount to you, he said as he left. A little more motivation to fulfill your commitment. Geez, that was stressful. To think Hinata is Hitomi-sama's daughter, now I understand a bit of why Hinata acts the way she does. Buddha Yuro, she sounds so lonely, Naruto said, swallowing as he watched the Hyuga patriarch depart. Shaking out of his reverie, Naruto began to run to the gates, praying that his team hadn't left without him. Naruto was bored. Walking at a civilian pace was so slow that he detested it. He was mentally tearing his hair out for a boy who had trouble staying still. He was tired of the kunai exercise and had run out of tags to write seals on. He had inquired as to whether Sasuke had brought his lightning scroll, but it appears that he had only brought a genjutsu scroll for practice, leaving his lightning scroll at home. Naruto dared not approach Hinata to strike up a conversation. He didn't have to get along with her, even though he had vowed to stop being openly rude to her. Therefore, he decided to ask Kakashi for suggestions. Hey, Kakashi-sensei, do you have any chakra exercises for me? Or maybe a new jutsu to practice? Knowing that he now had to find a way to keep the vivacious blonde entertained, Kakashi sighed, not surprised that she had grown bored. Kakashi searched the area for any clues as to what he could assign Naruto to do. The lazy Genin, who really just wanted to read his book, had an idea while looking at the trees. How about you work on your chakra affinities? Grab a leaf and try to only cause one reaction to occur. Try starting with your wind chakra. He would not be able to finish a paragraph by the end of the trip if he had to put up with Naruto's constant complaining. Even though he had read the book 18 times, he felt that it only got better with each reading. This suggestion pleased Naruto, who hurried to the roadside to gather some leaves. He tucked one into his pocket and attempted to channel only wind chakra into it. It produced the same response as the paper when Kakashi put their skills to the test. Naruto, however, was unfazed by this. He had endured hardships throughout his life. And he was aware that you had to earn everything. He had to put in effort, whether it was to learn something new or win someone else's respect and trust. He also had it 3 times more difficult than the others because he was the Jinchuriki. Naruto repeatedly performed the exercise after pulling out another leaf. Hinata had brought scrolls for water jutsu, medical ninjutsu, and taijutsu. She was currently studying her scroll on medical ninjutsu. She was able to comprehend the scroll in general because she had already studied a lot about the human body while learning the Juken fighting style. That didn't, however, make practicing the more complex jutsu any simpler. This stuff was on for larger injuries like reattaching a torn arm, but it was also on for evaluating a person's health. At the moment, Hinata was able to treat larger wounds and burns. She also had a first aid kit and some healing ointments for the wounds she knew she couldn't treat, which should help stabilize the victim until she could locate a more qualified healer. She was also aware that hard work was the only path to advancement. Her sister and cousin were both Juken fighting prodigies. Even after hours of practice to stay ahead of her sister, Hinata came dangerously close to losing a single battle to her. But she was only able to continue doing the same thing for so long before she lost patience with the subpar outcomes. Hinata chose to pause her training and observe her surroundings, so she rolled up her scroll. She noticed that the sky was a vivid baby blue with fluffy, light clouds. Hinata's normally rigid posture was broken for a moment by a slight relaxation of her shoulders. She cherished the sensation she experienced when gazing up at the sky. It gave her a sense of freedom from her obligations, which she had only experienced as a child around her mother. Her shoulders reverted to their natural position, and she turned her attention back to the road to observe what the others were doing. She had witnessed Sasuke attempt a lightning jutsu, which he had been honing for weeks. Although it was a jutsu that required him to touch the opponent in order to have an effect, it was said to be able to numb or paralyze opponents. Therefore, even though it was excellent for close combat, Sasuke's lack of control over the jutsu meant that he had to practice it in short bursts to give his hands time to recover from being numbed. With a focus that could pierce steel, Naruto was gazing at a leaf. The leaf abruptly split in two, with the middle part perfectly split. He had been trying for the past hour to just cut a leaf, and now he had succeeded, and a smile spread across his face. A small, rather strange dance of joy had been initiated by him. If she recalled correctly, he grabbed another leaf and went to celebrate again as soon as he had begun. Hinata had few positive things to say about Naruto, but she had to acknowledge that he was resolute and self-assured, even though she could counter that this confidence was simply foolishness. Taking occasional sips from his bottle of sake, Tazuna had begun discussing something with Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi was enjoying his chat with Tazuna and had put away his perverted book. After learning about the book at the library, Hinata's respect for her sensei had significantly diminished. However, on the day of the bell test, she was unsure of how to feel about her teammates' response to the book. She was furious that Naruto would develop such a perverted jutsu and that Sasuke would learn it, though, which contributed to her inability to draw conclusions about her teammates. Nevertheless, she had seen Naruto and Sasuke play numerous practical jokes on Kakashi whenever he attended a book club gathering or strolled around reading the book. She questioned whether or not her teammates were perverts, perplexed by their behavior. Hinata noticed a puddle of water on the side of the road as she scanned her surroundings. She was aware that all of the rainwater would have dried up because this area hadn't seen any rain in weeks. "Get the others and make your way towards Tazuna," said Kakashi-sensei as she rushed up to tell him. The fact that Kakashi had observed the puddle startled Hinata. He hadn't even seemed to notice. With a nod, Hinata approached Naruto and Sasuke and whispered the strategy. Sasuke shoved his partially numb hands into his pockets and stopped practicing his jutsu. Trying to look casual, Naruto put his hands behind his head and nodded in understanding. As the three moved to form a defensive circle around Tazuna, they watched intently for any potential attackers. Kakashi had fallen behind the group, slowing down. He didn't appear to be on guard because he had taken out his book. The puddle's water suddenly rose and took the shape of two ominous-looking men. One wore a cloak to conceal his body and a horn protruding from a ninja forehead protector. The other had horns on either side of the forehead protector and was cloakless. On his left hand, he had an odd claw, and a spiked chain connected it to his other hand's cloak. After that, they hurried over to Kakashi and shackled him. On his right hand, which was the other end of the chain, the cloaked brother also had claws. The two pulled hard, tearing Kakashi to pieces. When the Genin saw their sensei ripped to pieces, their eyes widened in shock. The pair stretched the chain between them as they charged the Genin after finishing Kakashi. When Hinata saw her sensei die, she was shocked and her mother's memories came flooding back. Sasuke, who was still dealing with the PTSD from the massacre, began to hyperventilate. Naruto was also upset about the situation, but he knew that if he didn't act, his teammates would end up in the same situation as his sensei. Shouting, "Shadow Clone Jutsu!" Naruto met the enemy's charge. The original Naruto was joined by 20 new ones. Smoke filled the air as the two forces collided, claws meeting kunai. After a minute of recuperating from the initial shock, Sasuke and Hinata rushed to join their teammate. After delaying the two, Naruto was now dodging numerous slashes. The two were preoccupied and didn't realize Sasuke and Hinata until the very last minute because of the Narutos. Sasuke had put the other under a genjutsu and had begun tying him up when Hinata managed to block enough chakra points to paralyze the one wearing the cloak. Naruto grinned. His group had just dispatched two ninja of Chunin level with ease. When Kakashi realized the battle was over, he left the tree line unharmed. When the Genin saw their sensei, their mouths fell open. They turned to see a stack of logs where they had witnessed him being ripped apart. "Well done, team. There were definitely points we could improve upon, but no one got hurt." The attacker Sasuke had escaped the genjutsu and severed his bonds as he was finishing. The man with the claws swung at Naruto. When Hinata noticed this, he struck the man with a juken, knocking him unconscious and sending him flying away from Naruto and into a tree. With wide eyes, Naruto said, "That could have killed me. I would have been gravely wounded, if not worse, had Hinata not taken action. For Kami's sake, Hinata, she despises me." Hinata turned around and glared at Naruto as she stood in front of the tree she had struck the man into. Hinata began to sway and said, "Hey Uzumaki Teme. Pay attention or else you're going to get killed." Then Hinata collapsed to the floor. Tazuna and her team ran to her. When she struck the man who was assaulting Naruto, he had succeeded in leaving a nasty cut on her hand from his claws. "This claw is coated with poison. Naruto, patch her up," Kakashi declared after approaching the unconscious man and examining the claw for a minute. Naruto winced briefly and started to ask Kakashi how he knew he could heal Hinata, but he changed his mind after hearing Heishi warn that Hinata might not survive if he did not act quickly. Naruto started working after retrieving a first aid kit from his backpack. As he completed dressing Hinata, Naruto wiped his forehead. Naruto sat her against a tree and turned to face Kakashi, his eyes dark. "How did you know I could do it?" Sasuke also had doubts about his sensei. He was aware that Naruto could handle venom with ease because they had been studying first aid since their third year of the academy. How was Kakashi aware of it? "The only thing Naruto has mentioned to me is that he is learning first aid. And a year has passed since then. Since then, Naruto hasn't mentioned it. Neither in training nor elsewhere has he demonstrated any proficiency in first aid. What else does he know about us if he is aware of this?" Then, with an expression of curiosity, Sasuke looked at his sensei. Kakashi grinned and replied, "Well, I was passing through the library and saw some of your clones reading. One of them was reading a very advanced medical book that someone who wasn't knowledgeable in the field wouldn't be able to understand." Naruto sighed after maintaining a gloomy stare on his sensei. Naruto turned to face the men who had attacked them and decided that pushing any farther would not help. "So who are these punks anyways?" "They're B-class criminals, the Demon Brothers. They're missing Nin from the Hidden Mist village. I'm guessing they were hired to take out Tazuna on his way back to the village. Such powerful criminals rank higher than a simple C-rank mission," Kakashi said while staring at Tazuna with a defeated sigh. Tazuna described the circumstances in his village, how his village has fallen into poverty as a result of a criminal named Gato controlling all the ship ports. How the robbers and thugs steal the majority of the village's money and occasionally abduct young women for their own gratification in the middle of the night. Sasuke and Naruto were so enraged that they both gave off enough murderous intent to make Tazuna perspire. Kakashi chose to make it worthwhile for the Leaf, even though he knew that these two wouldn't leave this village for nothing. "While that is unfortunate, we can't just liberate an entire town for free. If you used all the town's money for this mission, that means you can't afford the entire mission. Come on you two, we're going back to the Leaf. Please help my village. We might not be able to pay you now, but we were once a decently wealthy village and can pay your village double the appropriate price once we are able to get things back to the way they were," said Tazuna as Kakashi pretended to be considering the offer and grinned. "Well, I'd say that seems fair." Sasuke scowled at Kakashi, and Naruto was about to launch into a tirade when Tazuna interrupted. "I'm going to send a message to the Leaf for a retrieval team and to explain recent developments because we can't leave these two on the side of the road any longer. Go check on Hinata, Naruto, and if she appears to be in good enough health, try to wake her up." Naruto nodded and grinned before realizing that his sensei had never intended to leave Tazuna's village. He had only wanted to make sure they made money off of it. His mood soured, so he turned to Hinata and checked her forehead to make sure she wasn't burning up. He then began to shake her gently and then lightly tapped her arm, but nothing happened. He then splashed some water on her face from a water bottle, but nothing happened. "She's out cold," he said, turning to Kakashi. "I predict that she will be asleep for at least 2 more hours." "Well, I guess you'll have to carry her," smirked Sasuke. Naruto yelled, "What? Why'd I have to carry her?" "Well, I'm carrying her pack, and Kakashi needs to be ready to defend against enemies, so a euro that leaves you to carry her," Sasuke replied. After readjusting his pack and glaring at his smirking companion, Naruto managed to get Hinata on his back so he could carry her on his piggyback with a little assistance from Sasuke. The sight of Naruto with a sleeping Hinata on his back made Kakashi laugh when he returned. "Take a picture, it'll last longer. Now let's go so we can kick some crime boss butt." Naruto said after hearing Kakashi giggle. The group left again for the village of Tazuna. Hinata had woken up with a headache approximately 2 hours later, as Naruto had predicted. She tried to block out the world by burying her face in Naruto's back, oblivious to her surroundings due to the headache. Here, take this, it'll help with the headache, Naruto said, blushing as he pulled a flask from his pocket and held it to his ear. Hinata just wanted this headache to end so she could go back to sleep. She was still not processing who was carrying her. Hinata picked up the flask, drank the vile liquid, and gave it back to Naruto. Her headache subsided after a few minutes, and Hinata began to groggily take in her surroundings. She became aware that she was being carried when she noticed that she was moving. She jerked her head forward and realized Naruto was carrying her. Well, you passed out from the poison, and after patching you up, somehow I was left to be the one to carry you as we continued to Wave Country, Naruto said with a feeble smile as Hinata's face flushed as she asked her teammate, what are you doing? After processing for a few seconds, Hinata nodded in comprehension and stepped away from Naruto. Without a fuss, Naruto let her go and carried on walking. When Hinata went to pick up her pack from Sasuke, she became aware of the bandage covering her hand. It was done expertly, and further research was the right course of action in response to poisoning. Sasuke was asked by Hinata, who did this? It was Naruto. Had he not been here, you would have eventually died from it? This information surprised Hinata. Was it Naruto who did this? Naruto Uzumaki, what other secrets are you keeping hidden? Hinata continued to examine Naruto, wondering what else he might be concealing, while swinging her pack over her shoulder. A few days later the group reached a small boat that was beached on a foggy shore. The Junin shoved the boat into the water, then jumped on board and sat down to rest after everyone but Kakashi piled in. Regretfully, the boat could accommodate 4 people. Naruto offered to use chakra to keep himself from falling off the boat's floor so that his sensei, who had been on guard for the previous few days, could relax. When they reached the halfway point of their crossing, the Genin gazed in awe at the enormous bridge that was being constructed above them. Impressive, huh? That's what's going to save our village. With that, Gato won't be able to prevent us from trading and we'll be able to live happily, Tazuna said with a smile. In his life, he had built a lot of beautiful bridges, but this one was the most significant to him. A portion of my village's suffering will be alleviated once this bridge is completed. The riders had to beach the boat in order to exit it. Naruto fell as a result of the beaching's abrupt stop. After becoming sidetracked by Tazuna's bridge, he had ceased using chakra to maintain stability. He fell face first into Hinata's chest as a result. Hinata glanced down at Naruto as he froze. Before both Genin turned scarlet and leapt out of the boat, 20 feet apart, on the shore, the onlookers could count to 5. Tazuna and Kakashi laughed at what they saw. Sasuke had arched his brows in surprise and was relieved that Hinata wasn't losing his temper because he thought his friend might not make it out of this mission alive. Tazuna concluded that he had had enough of the cute scene before him. Alright, you pubescent teenage ears, let's get going. I've got a bridge to build and don't have the time to watch you two be embarrassed all day. Hinata and Naruto became even more enraged and rudely responded to Tazuna's taunts in numerous ways. Kakashi grinned as Sasuke's perspiration stopped. The group discovered a clearing that led to a lake as they began their journey through the woods to reach the village. Kakashi and Naruto came to a halt when they got to its center. However, it was 2 distinct types of experience, both based on instincts from years of experience. After that, the two began drawing kunai. Sasuke and Hinata trailed behind. Hinata, Naruto, Sasuke. Triangle formation around Tazuna. Hinata, use your Byakugan to try and find who's here, instructed Kakashi. Hinata's world turned monochrome as the Genin nodded and huddled together, activating her Byakugan. The rustle of the leaves was followed by silence as Hinata threw a kunai into a tree to her left. Cruel, bloodlust-filled laughter erupted as a tall, thin, slightly built man with a massive sword on his back emerged from the trees. So Euro, what do we have here? Kakashi of the Sharingan, a Hyuga, and 2 brats. To think the leaf has fallen so far as to send a team so weak on such a mission. For those of you who don't know, I am the demon of the hidden mist, Zabuza, and this will be your final resting spot. Hidden mist jutsu. Only a Hyuga could see through the dense fog that shrouded the clearing. Hinata yelled, "Duck!" Just a few seconds later, the enormous sword that would have severed Tazuna's head and decapitated all of the Genin came spinning overhead. Halfway through the trunk of a tree, the sword struck it and came to a stop. Then Zabuza hit the handle. Then, in an attempt to incapacitate his opponents, he vanished in a sudden burst of speed and landed in the center of the triangle, ready to chop down Hinata. Kakashi used a kunai to counter Zabuza's sword, and his forehead protector was now raised to reveal a Sharingan in his left eye. Zabuza exploded into water after Kakashi stabbed him in the stomach with a kunai. Then, turning around, Kakashi blocked Zabuza's sword once more, causing him to drop to his knee for support before inhaling smoke. The air was then filled with the clanging of metal as the two Junin-level shinobi engaged in combat. Zabuza's defenses were eventually breached, and Kakashi stabbed him in the chest. Zabuza exploded in water. After the actual Zabuza fell from the sky and sliced Kakashi in two, the latter fell into a pool of water. Then a blade touched Zabuza's throat. "It's over," said Kakashi. With a smile, Zabuza said, "I don't think so." Just then, Kakashi was slashed by another water clone. Kakashi landed on the neighboring lake after dodging. "Wrong move, water prison jutsu," laughed Zabuza. Kakashi was surrounded by a bubble of water, and he could do nothing to break it. "Take care of the brats." Zabuza commanded his clone to put a hand in Kakashi's prison as he ran across the water like he was running on solid ground. Sasuke and Naruto threw kunai and shuriken as the other Zabuza hurried the Genin, and Hinata went to meet it. The clone ducked under Hinata's attack and avoided the projectiles. Then he prepared his sword and kicked her in the stomach, sending her flying backwards. After having a thought, Naruto hurried to tell Hinata about his scheme. Transformation Jutsu was then used by Naruto to create a clone. After yelling, "Hey Sasuke! Catch!" Naruto turned to face Sasuke and hurled a folded windmill shuriken. When Sasuke caught it, he understood what was going on. Smirking, Sasuke turned to face Zabuza's clone. After unfolding the shuriken, he began to charge. To help Sasuke, Naruto had called forth a few clones. As it made its way to Sasuke, Zabuza's clone prepared his sword and began effortlessly eliminating the Narutos. Sasuke threw the shuriken at Zabuza's clone while this was going on. To get away from the shuriken, the clone leaned back Matrix style. The shuriken proceeded and was headed straight for the real Zabuza, who had his hand in the water orb holding Kakashi to prevent the Leaf Junin from escaping. Zabuza felt the blades shave a few hairs off the top of his head as he jumped and rolled over when he saw the shuriken coming toward him. The shuriken left Hinata behind as it exploded into smoke after traveling a few meters. Water gun jutsu. She aimed a water beam at Zabuza with her finger. Kakashi was freed when Zabuza leapt away from him to prevent his arm from being severed. After canceling the jutsu, Hinata fell into the water. She resurfaced and joined Naruto and Sasuke by using water jutsu to propel herself to the shore. Hinata had transformed into a shuriken after Naruto had transformed a clone into her. Naruto and Sasuke were able to destroy it by striking it with multiple kunai, taking advantage of Zabuza's clone's surprise at seeing two Hinata. Now, the three Genin watched as their sensei looked down at Zabuza. The two suddenly began making hand signals so quickly that their hands blurred. They both yelled, "Water Dragon Jutsu," at the same time. As the lake water began to rise, it rushed at their opponent, the caster, and formed two terrifying dragons that raced toward each other. The two dragons sunk their fangs into one another and then coiled around one another to explode in water. Zabuza's eyes widened and Kakashi's narrowed. "What? The hidden mist has a secret about that jutsu. Furthermore, it was not created until after the Third Great Shinobi War. How is he aware of it?" In an attempt to identify the silver-haired Junin, Zabuza narrowed his eyes. "Well, I'll just use my own invention to hit him." Kakashi had already begun creating his own signs prior to Zabuza's. Zabuza barely paid attention to Kakashi's actions in order to protect himself from any potential attacks. "Tidal Wave Jutsu," was yelled by Kakashi as he finished. Zabuza was horrified because he had just cancelled out Kakashi's tidal wave with his own in the same jutsu. It had cost so much chakra that Zabuza was gasping for air. Zabuza wanted to know how Kakashi had discovered that jutsu. Furthermore, he couldn't have copied it because Kakashi had already performed it. How did he know how to perform that jutsu? Kakashi concluded Zabuza's sentence. "How is this possible? Can you?" Zabuza flinched in terror, and Kakashi responded, "See into the future?" "Yes, and your future has you dying real soon." Zabuza turned pale and began to flee. Before he could escape the water, a pair of senbon needles punctured his neck, killing him and preventing him from moving far. Zabuza was caught by an unfamiliar individual in a green robe and a white mask, who then turned to face Kakashi. The enigmatic figure said, I'm a hunter nin from Curry. I've been chasing this one for a while, thank you for holding him off long enough. Then, carrying Zabuza's body, they vanished into the trees. Kakashi was too exhausted to think about the hunter nin. He limped to the beach and fell. They hurried to their sensei, the Genin. After looking for damage on his body for a minute, Hinata released a sigh of relief and told her teammates, he's just facing chakra exhaustion, while it's not great, it could be worse. Sasuke nodded as Naruto released the breath he had been holding. Something wasn't quite right with him, even though he was worried about his sensei's health. There was something strange about that hunter nin, but he was at a loss for what it was. Tazuna noticed that their sensei needed to take a break when she jogged up to the Genin. Come on, he can rest in my house, it's not too far from here. Naruto and Sasuke dragged their sensei to Tazuna's house on the outskirts of the village after getting Kakashi to hang between them with an arm around their shoulders. Tsunami, Tazuna's daughter, welcomed them as they entered the house. She rushed Sasuke and Naruto into a spare room so their sensei could get some rest, placing him on a futon for guests. Then, exhausted from the day's excitement, the two boys collapsed on the ground. Despite being equally exhausted, Hinata sat with her back to the wall, resisting the urge to join them. The Genin fell asleep in a matter of seconds, and it was late. Tsunami grinned as she observed from the doorway, saying, "They look so peaceful." She forced herself to leave the scene and went to sleep as well. She quickly covered her father with a blanket to prevent him from getting a cold after she saw him dozing off on the couch on her way. She went to her room and fell asleep after realizing that her father and the ninja were safe. When Hinata woke up, Naruto's arm was around her waist and she was using his shoulder as a pillow. Her cheeks briefly flushed, but then she recalled yesterday's events and became enraged at the blonde for his perversion. Luckily for her, nobody else was awake, so the Hyuga started to get up and Juken hit Naruto in the stomach. After coughing in agony, Naruto awoke from the blow and immediately passed out, his limbs twitching. She knew they'd need him in peak condition for any attacks, so she didn't get to do this the last time because she was too ashamed at the boat to do anything. After giving Naruto his lesson, Hinata left the room to check on the other people and see if she could find breakfast. When Naruto awoke in agony, he discovered that only Kakashi-sensei remained in the room after Sasuke and Hinata had left. However, Naruto was unable to recall the cause of his pain. He'd been dreaming of relaxing in the forest with this cute Konoha girl he had a slight crush on. They were lying on a hill with her head resting on his shoulder and his arm around her waist when he was abruptly awakened by a sharp pain in his stomach. Before he could comprehend what had happened, he passed out. Naruto got up and went in search of food. Hinata was staring at Naruto as if he were the devil himself when he opened the door to the room. This was a look that tried to kill him more than any other, even though he was accustomed to being called a demon. After letting out the breath he had been holding and carefully closing the door, Naruto attempted to make sense of his terrifying teammate. What was that? I am aware that she despises me, but what did I do to earn her hatred? Is the boat incident the reason she's getting upset now? After a few minutes and several deep breaths, Naruto composed himself, walked out the door, and sat down at the table, attempting to avoid looking at Hinata. Tsunami had prepared eggs, sausage, and a Western breakfast. The land of waves has been impacted by numerous foreign cultures because it was once a major trading nation. Naruto was hungry after skipping lunch yesterday, and the food in front of him smelled amazing. Naruto grabbed the odd implement known as a fork and pushed the food into his mouth. Even though he didn't eat many home-cooked meals, he certainly enjoyed them. All they felt was a sense of comfort. Naruto was unsure of what to call it, but it reminded him of the contented way families appeared in Konoha. Only when they were younger and with Hitomi-sama at Sasuke's house did Naruto experience this emotion. But as the years passed, Naruto gradually lost the memory of that sensation. Naruto smiled even though the breakfast didn't have the same intensity of that emotion. Naruto looked around after finishing his meal to see what the others were up to. Hinata had stopped staring and returned to reading her medical ninjutsu scroll, while Tazuna sat at the end of the table with a blueprint and a cup of coffee, and Tsunami was at the sink doing the dishes. Sasuke had been eating slowly, and he was still eating. No one else seemed to find this odd, but Naruto knew that Sasuke was relishing each bite and reminiscing about good times spent with his family. Naruto was reminded that Hinata had also lost a family member when he witnessed Sasuke doing this. Naruto pondered, is she also missing this feeling? As he turned to face the Hyuga. Naruto chose to ask, so Tazuna, how many people are working on that bridge? After shaking his head to get his thoughts straight, Tazuna decided to play on the boy's curiosity after looking up from his paper. Well, only 30 of them are getting paid, The rest are townspeople that want to help out. So in total it's about 43 people working on it. The reason why production has stopped is because of Gato sending men to terrorize the builders. I'm guessing production has been on hold since you left, replied Naruto. Yes, it'll take a few days to get word out that we're starting it back up, so feel free to explore the village, train, or get some alone time with that girlfriend of yours, Tazuna said as he drank his coffee. Hinata and Naruto became enraged and once more angrily denied Tazuna's assertion. Sasuke grinned at the two, taking in the spectacle. After waking up 2 minutes earlier, Kakashi made the decision to enter the room at that moment. It's nice to see you all are enjoying yourselves. Tsunami, are there any crutches I can borrow? He said to his team, leaning on the doorframe for support. Tsunami nodded before entering a hallway closet. She gave Kakashi a pair of basic wooden crutches that she had taken out. Kakashi sighed, his muscles loosening slightly as he positioned them. Okay, now that I can move, I want you all to be ready to train in 30 minutes. We have some time before the builders are ready to come back, and I have some things to teach you before we fight Gato's thugs and gangsters. Excited to learn something new from his sensei, Naruto threw his fist in the air. What's the point of training? You're just gonna die anyways. A young boy at the bottom of the stairs caught everyone's attention. Like his mother, he had dark hair, but it was more brown than her black. The boy's remark ticked Naruto off, so he asked, "What did you say, kid?" "You heard me, Blondie. Heroes don't miraculously show up and save the day. They die when they actually are up against people with power, and suffer because of their stupidity." Tsunami yelled, "Inari. These are our guests. Please don't be rude," with obvious pain in her voice. Since Kakashi had experienced so many different kinds of pain, he was now able to recognize practically any kind of emotional suffering. This was the suffering caused by losing a loved one. "I think it's his dad." As Inari quietly went to his room, Kakashi watched. With her head down, Tsunami sat at the table and described how Kaiza, Inari's stepfather, was the village hero and how she was the only one to confront the crime boss when Gato showed up. Tazuna had to finish the story after she broke down in tears and was unable to continue. As Team 7 listened further, they discovered that Kaiza had been killed and publicly humiliated in front of Inari, and that Inari had since accused Kaiza of abandoning him for a pointless reason. The room fell silent as Tazuna finished. Team 7 had all empathized with Inari's suffering. Although they all experienced pain in different ways, Hinata was the one who was most offended by this tale. She felt kinship with the boy because his pain was so similar to her own. Before heading out for training, she made the decision to speak with him. Hinata approached Inari's door and gave it a soft knock. On the other side of the door, a muffled, "Come in," was heard. When Hinata entered, she saw Inari standing at the window, his head buried in his arms. Inari mockingly questioned, "What do you want? Are you going to beat me up for insulting your pride?" After a moment of silence, Hinata said, "I'm sorry about your stepfather." Inari's eyes grew wide and she began to cry. "He seems like he was a good man, kind, caring, and brave." "Yeah, that dumb bravery ended up killing him," Inari yelled as he turned around, his eyes still watering. "Your stepfather was not stupid for being brave when no one else was. He was a man of honor, and should be respected as such," warned Hinata. "What do you know about losing someone? You probably became a ninja for the glory and money, to be a hero. Heroes are the first to die, but you wouldn't know this because you've been sheltered all your life by your mommy and daddy. Believing that the world will show mercy to you when you actually get into danger. You know nothing of my pain," Inari exclaimed, blinded by his feelings. Hinata took a deep breath to relax, hidden feelings emerging. "Actually I do. Just like you lost your stepfather, I lost my mother. She was my hero, she made me feel confident. Not that that confidence would last much after I actually tried talking to someone. Unlike you, however, I didn't give up on heroes like her. Instead I strived to become one, because that's what she would have wanted me to do. And it's what Kaiza would have wanted you to do. Don't disrespect his memory by cursing those who strive to be like him." When Inari was accused of disrespecting his stepfather, he recoiled and acknowledged that he had done so. Hinata concluded, leaving Inari sitting on the floor, lost in his thoughts, "You're not the only one who knows pain, and yours isn't the worst of it. Sasuke, the one with the black hair, lost his entire family in one night, and you know who killed them? His own brother." After a minute, Hinata started to walk away when she heard a gentle, "I'm so sorry," sound. Then Hinata felt one tear fall down her cheek. Many suppressed feelings came back to the surface, and she hoped they would pass quickly, After wiping away the tear, Hinata headed to training in the hopes that it would ease the pain. There was a huge lake in front of Team 7. They gazed out in awe of the sight's splendor. Kakashi interfered with the beginning of training. "Okay team, over the past 2 months, we haven't been able to train much. However, you were able to accomplish the tree walking exercise in that time. Today we'll be taking it to the next level, walking on water." That being said, Kakashi hobbled to the lake and began to walk on the water, as though it were a surface. Naruto's jaw dropped to the floor, disbelieving what he was seeing. However, because Hinata and Sasuke came from ninja families and occasionally witnessed family members engaging in such behavior, they were accustomed to such things. But they had never been taught how to do it. Recalling his own astonishment upon first witnessing Naruto's response, Kakashi grinned. "Just like the tree exercise, you have to use chakra to stay afloat. Too much and you'll make the water too unstable, too little and you'll sink. Any questions?" The genin understood the exercise and shook their heads. "You may now begin. I hope you brought an extra change of clothes," said Kakasuo with a smile. Kakashi finished and left the lake to take a nap by a tree. Naruto had an extra pair of shorts, but that was about all he had for a change of clothes. Naruto sighed and began taking off his jumpsuit, but Hinata mistook this for stripping to his underwear. Hinata yelled, "What do you think you're doing?" with a pink tint on her face. "I'm taking off the jumpsuit. I only have one of these, so I want to keep it dry." "Don't worry, I have shorts on." Angry that her teammate didn't seem to care how his actions appeared to the others, Hinata collected herself and turned away. When he first began, Kakashi had raised an eyebrow at Naruto, but after Naruto explained, he lowered it. Unfazed by Naruto's actions, Sasuke stifled a laugh as he observed Hinata's response. Naruto and Sasuke, who had left their shirts on land, were among the 3 genin standing in front of the water. Hinata was still wearing her heavy beige jacket and had only taken off her shoes. "Hinata, why don't you take off the jacket? I doubt it'll dry quickly if it gets wet," said Naruto, perplexed. Hinata's ears turned pink. She wore loose-fitting clothes in part because she was self-conscious about her appearance. He's got a point. What's worse, waiting for the jacket to dry and possibly suffering later, or enduring the humiliation now? Hinata went to a rock and removed her jacket, reasoning that it was much better for her team to see her without it than for the entire town to see her. Before turning to rejoin her team, she folded it neatly. There was a wide range of responses from her team. When he saw her mature figure, Sasuke showed no visible reaction. Kakashi only raised an eyebrow. Reminiscent of the boat incident, Naruto had turned red and shook his head, attempting to purge his mind of filthy thoughts. When the genin were all prepared, they began to walk out onto the lake after channeling chakra to get to their feet. They all reached 10 feet before Naruto became distracted and began to flail as he fell. The other 2 became distracted as a result. They were above the water, which was reaching their ribs, because it was a lake. Naruto had been rendered numb to the cold by his prisoner when he was 4 years old, as he frequently slept in the winter without a blanket. Sasuke and Hinata shivered in the chilly water. The genin returned to the coast and resumed their journey. Their wet clothing is clinging to them and absorbing more heat from the bodies that wore it. In an attempt to divert his thoughts from Hinata's clothes fitting her body and leaving even less room for his imagination, Naruto returned his focus to the exercise. Both Sasuke and Hinata were worn out by midday. Sasuke follows closely behind Hinata, who has perfected the exercise. Apparently unfazed by the final 3 hours of the chakra exercise, Naruto kept working while they took a break. Each time, however, he had been able to go farther and farther. Every time he lost control and fell, he always swam back to shore and began anew. After an hour, Sasuke had also mastered the exercise and had begun sparring Hinata on the surface of the lake. Frustrated by the exercise, Naruto had created some clones. Naruto could now walk on water with ease thanks to his clones. Running and fighting, however, still required improvement. Naruto was able to run and fight on water as if it were second nature after 2 hours. Sasuke had just taken another break when he started fighting him. When she and Sasuke had completed their break, Kakashi had called over Hinata, who had won the sparring match. "What did you want to talk about, Kakashi-sensei?" "Hinata, have you ever considered modifying the Juken fighting style?" Kakashi asked. Kakashi's question startled Hinata because a Hyuga could not have imagined such a thing. "Never. The Juken fighting style can only be used properly by a Hyuga, and as such, every Hyuga should use it," Hinata replied. Kakashi had begun his rebuttal in anticipation of this. First, while the Juken fighting style is very powerful and difficult, a non-Hyuga can do it just as well as a Hyuga, as long as they know where the chakra points are. So no, it is not a Hyuga's responsibility to only use the Juken fighting style. Second, the Juken fighting style relies on brute strength for most of its power. Strength you do not have, instead you have flexibility. Using that flexibility, you'll have an easier time fighting, and will be able to deliver more devastating blows. Just in a different way. Now, I will not force you into this decision, but I advise you as your sensei, to listen to me. Unfortunately for Kakashi, Hinata was very good at hiding her feelings, so he kept an eye on her face for any obvious reactions. Few people were aware of Kakashi's secret trump card, which he used to try to push her over the edge. Hinata had given Kakashi her whole attention, and few people outside the clan were aware of her battles with her sister for the title of heiress. If you allow me to assist you, you won't have to worry about your sister defeating you. She is more flexible than strong, just like you, but she is not as flexible as you, so she currently has an easier time with the fighting style. If you are able to master this style, imagine how much stronger you and the Hyuga clan can become once you become a Euro. Hinata had been working toward clan head since her mother's death, and Kakashi concluded his rebuttal with it. Although it wasn't a secret, Hinata froze because it was unsettling to see her ambition used against her clan's values. Kakashi left to observe his other two genin after noticing that she was lost in thought and attempting to weigh her two options. Wishing that Hinata would take him up on his offer. Naruto and Sasuke were sitting with their backs to a tree, practicing one of the many subjects they had begun studying since they began to take advantage of their easygoing sensei, when the sun had begun to set. While traveling to Wave Country, Sasuke worked on his lightning jutsu. Naruto could hear Sasuke mumbling, paralysis jutsu, every time. As part of his fuinjutsu practice, Naruto had started putting seals on top of my other seals. Hinata had returned home to reflect. Though she was concerned about the clan elders' reaction if they learned that she had altered their sacred style, she found herself agreeing with Kakashi's logic. Her status as heiress was already precarious, and altering her fighting style would undoubtedly result in her losing the title. In any case, within the next year, I will no longer hold the title of heiress. My weakness is a disgrace to the elders. What about Dad? How would he feel about this? Hinata was struggling to choose between earning her clan's respect and growing as a ninja. Now, Kakashi was perched on a tree branch, formulating a plan of attack for when they had to confront Zabuza again. If Gato has the financial means to hire such a skilled ninja. To remove the elderly man, who else has he hired? Additionally, Sasuke had mentioned the Hunter Nin. Instead of removing the body, a true Hunter Nin would have destroyed it immediately. There's something wrong with this. Kakashi stopped thinking and looked to see that the sun was setting. He began to make his way to Tazuna's house after shouting to Naruto and Sasuke that they would be departing. He is being chased by Naruto and Sasuke. One of the hidden safe houses of Gato and IV was inserted into Zabuza's arm as he lay in a bed in one of the medical rooms. It had been a full day since he went to sleep. The Hunter Nin who had killed the missing Mist Nin was keeping him company. In actuality, the Nin had only used the Senbon to strike specific nerves, causing Zabuza to enter a death-like state without actually passing away. This required a great deal of skill, which was developed over years. An ability that no typical 14-year-old possessed. Haku wasn't your typical boy. He used his Kekkei Genkai to kill his father in a fit of rage after witnessing his mother die at the hands of his father. Hunting down people who had a Kekkei Genkai was considered a sport after Kirigakure made it illegal. Having an affinity for ice elements was his Kekkei Genkai. Now it was a rare element found only in the land of snow. He detested seeing Zabuza in such a state and had come to view him as a father figure over the years. Haku was lost after killing his father. He had nowhere to return to, and he didn't want to run the risk of becoming just like his mother. In search of food scraps, he wandered the chilly streets. He then lost the will to live one bitterly cold winter night and fell to a bridge, allowing snow to pile up around him. He lay there hoping to die soon, but he had no idea how long he had been there. Eventually, though, someone approached him and gave him a foot bump. "Hey kid," came from a male voice. Haku remained silent in the hopes that the man would leave his young child's body to perish. This apparently did not sit well with the man. The man easily lifted Haku out of the snow by holding him by the back of his shirt, allowing him to meet Haku's eyes. When Haku finally saw the man, he smelled of blood and had shark-like teeth. "Look, kid, I'm looking for a tool. Now I could leave your pathetic self here to die a meaningless death. Or I could take you with me, and teach you how to use chakra. But you'll have to do anything and everything I tell you without hesitation. A tool does not talk back to its wielder. Which do you choose?" After giving the man's statement some thought, Haku thought, if I live longer, maybe I can make sure no other person's mother or father are killed for their special powers. Determinedly, Haku turned back to face the man. "I'll be your tool." "Good," was said by the man, who smiled slightly. After putting Haku back on his feet, the man turned to leave. "My name is Haku. What's yours?" Haku asked as he followed. "Zabuza," was the only word the man said as he turned to face the young boy next to him. There was silence in the house. An hour ago, everyone had gone to bed. Anybody but Sasuke. Tazuna had stated that everyone was prepared despite the short notice, and he was determined to learn the paralysis jutsu before having to protect the bridge builders. Sasuke rose slowly to his feet and began to channel chakra to silence his footsteps. Sasuke slipped out the window and began to run to the location where they had been training earlier. The only source of light on his path was the moon. A slight chill went down Sasuke's spine as the gentle winter wind blew. Winter was dreaded by Sasuke. It reminded me of that evening all those years ago. He had never been so miserable in his life. Without Naruto, he most likely would have lost his mind in his anger and been determined to exact revenge. However, this did not ease the winter. After spending the first month in the hospital, Sasuke had to find an apartment because he couldn't enter the Uchiha district without being struck by flashbacks to that night. Even though he thought his brother's actions that night had more motivation, the knowledge that his brother had murdered their entire family still caused him pain. Sasuke arrived at the training area and went to work. He said, "Paralysis jutsu," while making the hand signals. As if seeking a target to flow into, lightning shot out of his hands in flimsy, disorganized tendrils. Sasuke was trying to control the chaos caused by the lightning while he was deeply focused. 8 seconds passed before the lightning lost control and Sasuke's hands started to feel a little numb from the aftershock. Sasuke began again, shaking his hands. He had only recently discovered a way to regulate the quantity of lightning chakra, despite having been practicing this jutsu for weeks. All he had to do now was practice switching between paralyzing and numbing an opponent. After 6 more hours of practice, with numerous breaks to regain sensation in his hands, Sasuke eventually mastered the jutsu. Finally, Sasuke threw both hands in the air in triumph, still crackling with lightning, the first time he had done it without numbing them. The young Uchiha was thrilled to have finally mastered the jutsu after weeks of practice. His pride was the only thing preventing him from flipping and cartwheeling. Sasuke was more modest than most of his late Uchiha relatives, but he was proud of his clan and himself, and he didn't believe that such a show was suitable for someone of his caliber. Sasuke said, "Paralysis jutsu," and made the hand gestures he had been practicing for the previous 6 hours, canceling the jutsu. He could move his hands without the lightning fading, and it continued to crackle to life around his hands as before. Consider a Chidori with plasma ball energy. To avoid hitting himself in battle, Sasuke repeated this a few more times before practicing fighting with the jutsu active. He was moving so fast that the lightning from his punches created a trail of light. However, this taijutsu practice didn't last long because after a few minutes he passed out from exhaustion and finally allowed himself to sleep. Haku was searching the forest for medicinal plants to hasten Zabuza's recuperation. Even though the kimono he had found was girly, Haku didn't really mind. He was aware that he was frequently mistaken for a girl, but he took advantage of this when attempting to go about his daily activities, such as getting groceries. Unless he and Zabuza were accepting a job, he didn't really interact with other people. Haku trained day and night to become the best tool he could be after Zabuza saved him, and tools didn't go around making friends. Haku noticed a boy dozing off in the center of a clearing while scanning the area. Why is he out here? He's going to get a cold. Haku recognized the boy as a Leaf Village ninja as he approached him. I'll probably have to kill him later, Haku said, growing depressed. When Haku heard the boy awake, he began to leave. 2 black holes stared into Haku's soul as he turned around. Haku found himself staring at the boy because he had never seen someone with black irises before. Haku pulled himself together and forced a fake smile as he snapped out of his reverie. Hello. What are you doing out here? You'll catch a cold. A girl wearing a pink kimono was standing in front of Sasuke when he woke up. It was an odd scene to awaken to in the woods. Sasuke finally looked at the girl in front of him after he had shaken off his fatigue and ignored the Haku's question. She's beautiful, was the only thought that came to mind. Sasuke had unintentionally spoken out a portion of his thoughts while his brain was still awakening. Even though Haku had previously been referred to as beautiful, something about this time made his face slightly flush. For a few seconds, Sasuke was unaware of what he had done and wondered why the girl had suddenly turned pink. Then, he realized that he had said the final word in his mind, and his cheeks began to flush. After an uncomfortable pause, Haku made the decision to try his question once more. Suo Yuro, what were you doing out here? You could have caught a cold. It was Haku's hope that this would ease the tension that had developed. Sasuke responded to Haku's query and expressed gratitude for the stress reliever. I was a Yuro. Sasuke made up an excuse for enjoying the beauty of the winter night, so as not to reveal too much. Though he didn't want to seek the truth, Haku didn't buy this. Suo Yuro, what would your name be? My name is Haku. Mine is Sasuke. It's nice to meet you, Haku. Now, you asked me about what I was doing out here, but what are you doing? Haku had no motive to lie, so he gave an honest response. Haku felt awkward calling Zabuza his father, but it was more accurate than calling him his friend. I'm out here looking for medicinal herbs to help heal my sick Yuro father, he said. Sasuke gave a nod. You know, my companions that I came here with are skilled in the medical field. I'm sure they could help. The statement. Sorry, but my father is a very paranoid man, and doesn't take kindly to strangers, was shook by Haku. Haku then attempted to change the subject by discussing the forest and its inhabitants. With occasional jokes from Sasuke, the two conversed for 3 hours. In a conversation, the Uchiha could be surprisingly humorous. Sasuke made himself stop talking to Haku when he finally realized what time it was. When Sasuke said he had to leave, Haku was more disappointed than he had anticipated. Haku uttered, "Could we be Yuro friends?" without remembering that they were adversaries. Although he did not display it, Haku was an internal mess when a word that had not been thought of or spoken in the previous 5 years came to mind. Will he refuse? Is it too soon? I have no idea how this works because I have never had a friend. Perhaps it's something that isn't said. What if the fact that I'm a man freaks him out? But when asked this question, Sasuke grinned and replied, I'd be happy to be your friend, Haku. Haku's stomach began to churn when he saw the Uchiha's infrequent full smile, but then he realized there was one small detail he needed to clarify for Sasuke. Great. But, just so you know, I'm a boy. After a brief period of inattention, Sasuke's mind restarted and processed the information again. What? Haku lowered his head in fear that Sasuke would reject him as a friend after a few seconds passed without a response. Upon seeing this, Sasuke realized he needed to move quickly. No, wait, yes, Yuro, let me start over. I'd love to be your friend, he said. At this, Haku grinned sincerely, and Sasuke's face began to flush. The two parted ways after saying their final goodbyes, both of them wondering what on earth had happened. Haku didn't realize his current predicament or that his one and only friend would most likely be killed by him in the coming days until he returned to his herb-picking duties. Haku, who was still gathering herbs and attempting to suppress his feelings through his work, was moved to tears by this. Naruto was furious with Sasuke when he finally reached the bridge. Why did you sneak off in the middle of the night, and without me? When Naruto asked, Hinata and Kakashi started to perspire. Sasuke grinned and asked if he knew Naruto would be irked. I did? The words, damn right you did, bastard, were leaking out of Naruto's ears. I don't remember doing that. Are you sure it was me? Sasuke asked, looking to the clouds as though he was trying to recall something. Tazuna stopped Naruto just as he was about to rip his friend's limbs off. We're all ready. Before we get to work I need to show you where Gado's thugs usually attack from. Follow me. A smug-looking Uchiha, an enraged Uzumaki, irritated Hyuga, and an apparently uninterested Junin trailed behind Team 7. Tazuna returned to work, examining blueprints and occasionally assisting the builders after pointing out to the ninja the location of the bridge that the thugs typically scale to conduct raids and recounting previous raids from the bridge's entrance. Then Kakashi split his group in two. One group will monitor the bridge's sides, while the other will keep an eye on the entrance. Kakashi paired himself with Hinata in the hopes that she would decide to accept his offer, while Sasuke was paired with Naruto. Kakashi and Hinata began to move in the direction of the spot where the thugs usually climbed out of the bridge, while the two boys went to guard the entrance. Kakashi asked directly, Have you come to a decision yet about my offer? In an effort to save time, Hinata remained silent for a short while to go over all the arguments she had made yesterday in favor of her choice because she had anticipated her sensei would inquire about it. Hesitantly she replied, "Yes, I believe adapting the Juken fighting style will benefit me in the future. I know my clan won't be happy about it, but if we are to grow as a clan, we need to try new things in order to keep up with the times." She gave her sensei reasons for her decision, but it sounded more like she was reassuring herself than her sensei. Aware of the danger Hinata was taking by allowing him to change the style for her, Kakashi nodded. When they got there, Kakashi turned to Hinata and stated, "Now we're going to be here for a while. And while the criminals can attack at any time and I'm still recovering from my fight with Zabuza, I think I'll be able to hold them off myself if need be. So you are going to train in the meantime in the modified Juken form after I correct it. Now go through all the forms of the style one move at a time." After nodding, Hinata assumed her stance and waited for Kakashi to give her the order to move. The lengthy process of altering the Juken fighting style started after Kakashi determined that even her stance needed to be changed. Naruto had attempted to get Sasuke to divulge any details about the night before. Sasuke chose not to mention Haku when he told Naruto how he had learned the paralysis jutsu. For some reason, Sasuke felt uneasy telling Naruto about the enigmatic boy he had met in the forest, even though he trusted Naruto with his life. Sasuke's response pleased Naruto, but he was aware that there was more to the tale. Although he wouldn't press his friend for more, he was interested in what else had happened the night before because he and Sasuke had discussed nearly everything. That didn't stop Naruto's mind from spinning, though. What might have transpired last night that would have made Sasuke so reticent? Has he met anyone? Naruto ignored the world around him, lost in his thoughts and ideas about what might have happened. With a sigh, Sasuke left his friend to guard the bridge while he engaged in some genjutsu practice. An hour or so later, Naruto snapped out of his reverie and re-enjoyed Sasuke's fuinjutsu practice. I'm still wondering what transpired with Sasuke last night. A few hours later when Zabuza came out of his brief coma, he clutched his head in agony due to a burning headache. With haste, Haku offered him a cup of tea prepared from the herbs he had been gathering earlier. Zabuza drank it like a shot of sake, knowing it would help, even though it smelled terrible. Even so, the taste of the drink might be worse than the headache it had prevented. The taste of the tea gave Zabuza a brief chill, and he motioned for some water. Haku gave him another cup of water in compliance. "How long was I out?" Zabuza asked, turning to Haku after a quick drink. "Almost 2 days, anyone, and it would have taken a week to wake up," Haku replied. Feeling proud that his recovery system was superior to most, Zabuza nodded in understanding. Zabuza pushed off the bed and put a foot on the floor while attempting to stand, but he fell into Baku's arms and was put back on the bed. "You'll need a few days to recover though, your nervous system is still recovering from the attack. It'll only take a day for me," Zabuza said with a disapproving grunt. Zabuza went back to the bed and leaned against the wall while surveying the room. When Haku asked, "We're in one of Gado's safe houses?" he nodded. Zabuza relaxed a bit by letting the back of his head strike the wall and narrowing his eyes. "Should I let him know that I met Sasuke? I have a friend at last, but I'm just his tool, and tools don't keep secrets. Even though I'll most likely be fighting him later, Sasuke won't be able to tell because I'm wearing a mask. Zabuza might allow me to spare Sasuke." Gado had one of his goons kick the door open as Haku went to inform Zabuza of his encounter with the Leer Genin, hoping to spare his friend. Two thugs followed a short, irritated-looking man with small glasses and a receding hairline into the room. He said, "What am I paying you for? You good-for-nothing ninja. I wanted that bridge builder dead before he returned to the village. And you get beaten by a team of genin. I'm starting to wonder just how good of a ninja you actually are." Zabuza of the Blood Mist village, in a raspy voice that did nothing to conceal the years of drinking and smoking. Unbelievably quickly, Haku appeared in front of Gado, threatening to kill him with a senbon protruding from both sides of his neck. His goons were just pulling out their weapons when Gado began to perspire a little. "Haku isn't known to be a killer. Maybe today that will change, starting with you," stated Zabuza. Haku continued to press the senbon against Gado's neck, enough to initiate a trickle of blood. Gado scowled and gave the order for his men to put their weapons away before waiting for Haku to take the senbon off his neck. "I want that bridge builder to be gone by the end of the week, otherwise the deal is off and I'll find another assassin to do the job," stated Gado. Muttering something about ninjas being more expensive than they are worth, he turned around and left. After a few seconds, the room was silent as both ninja gradually restrained their desire to kill. Zabuza asked Haku. Were you going to say something earlier? After a few seconds had passed. Haku shook his head, afraid that Zabuza would reject him or discard him for being a bad tool. With a nod, Zabuza lay down on the bed. In 2 days, we'll attack. For now lay low and keep out of trouble. After we get paid we're killing Gato and leaving Wave Country. I'm sick of these Kami forsaken islands. After bowing to his master, Haku walked out of the room. Trying to get any doubts about the attack out of his head, he left to train. After 2 days she was staying in a room with a small window, and the warmth of the sun tickled her nose. When the sun finally reached Hinata's eyes, she was rudely awakened from her pleasant dream. When she sat up, she noticed that everyone else had gone for the day. Following a quick stretch, Hinata went into the kitchen, dining area in the hopes of enjoying a light breakfast before retiring for the day. Kakashi had been drilling Hinata in her new modified Juken form for the last 2 days. Additionally, she felt much more at ease and strong when fighting. She needed a break after practicing it for 2 days. Finally pleased with her performance, Kakashi had advised her the night before to take the day off to rest. Hinata went to the fruit bowl on the counter and picked up a pear. Hinata noticed a small cache of chocolates concealed behind the bowls as she opened the cabinet to retrieve a plate. Hinata grabbed a chocolate and slipped it into her sleeve, making sure no one was looking. After successfully robbing a confection, she went back to her original assignment and took a plate for herself. She picked up a knife to cut the pear as she was walking to the table. Her hands were extremely sticky when fruit juice got on them, so she practically always had her fruit chopped up to avoid this irritation. The only times she didn't have her fruit cut up were when she simply tossed a fruit into her bag because she was too exhausted in the morning to prepare a healthy school snack. Hinata cut the pear into slices, then took a piece and bit into it. She was relishing the cool sensation of a fresh pear on her tongue. Hinata threw out the pear core and finished her delicious breakfast, setting her plate and knife in the sink. Hinata retrieved the chocolate from her sleeve, opened it, and threw it into her mouth. Her lips formed a tiny smile. The Hyuga people were known to have a sweet tooth. The Hyugas had purchased Konoha's 4 dental practices in order to satisfy this sweet tooth, scheduling visits roughly every 2 months. Along with her father, she and her sister always brushed their teeth thoroughly at night, telling them terrible tales of Hyugas who didn't, whose teeth rotted, and who were cursed to never eat anything sweet again. Hinata went back into the room and settled herself on the futon she had brought, savoring the peaceful home and the warmth of the sun on her face. That morning, Naruto was unusually silent. Naruto would only respond that he felt like something negative was going to happen today when Sasuke asked how he was feeling. At this, Kakashi had arched an eyebrow and observed his genin's emotion. Being aware that a ninja's instincts, no matter how untrained, should never be disregarded. Returning to their posts, the Leaf Shinobi proceeded to their respective pastimes with caution, watching for any questionable activity. Unfortunately for them, the suspicious activity they were searching for didn't take long to appear. Within minutes, the workers were unable to see more than 10 feet ahead of them due to the thick fog that had rolled over the bridge. Sasuke, Naruto, locate Tazuna and keep him safe. Kakashi gave Naruto the order to create some shadow clones in order to warn Hinata and get the workers off the bridge. His genin did not hesitate to follow. All of the employees were escorted out in 10 minutes, and the real Naruto and Sasuke were now guarding Tazuna. Kakashi had raised his forehead shield for the impending conflict. Kakashi prepared 2 kunai and unsuccessfully attempted to see through the mist with Sharingan. Kakashi used his other senses to wait for his opponent to initiate contact, and he had a sneaking suspicion of who it might be. Kakashi heard the blade slicing through the air and ducked to keep his head from being severed. Kakashi leapt away and spun around, narrowly avoiding the subsequent blow and confronting Zabuza. Kakashi made fun of you by saying, "So you were friends with that false hunter Nin? Interesting. I underestimated you last time, so let's see how good you are when you can't use your fancy little Sharingan to help you," Zabuza said, gazing at his opponent. Zabuza then charged at Kakashi. The clash of blades started as Kakashi met his charge. When Hinata awoke from her nap and began pressing flowers in the room, she heard Inari's voice and 2 strange voices coming from the adjacent room. A haughty voice said, "It's easy, kid, just tell us where your mom is and we'll leave you alone." The other voiced, "Yeah, Gato's not a patient man, and we want to have some fun with her before we have to turn her over to him," loudly. Inari spoke softly, "I won't let you take my mother away. You can do what you want with me, but I will never tell you where she is. Is that right?" said the haughty voice. There was the sound of a sword slipping from its sheath. Hinata decided to interrupt and open the door to her room at that precise moment, leaving her jacket on the futon, letting the two thugs know she was there. The cocky-sounding one had a sword that was not in its sheath and had several chips in its blade. He wore a blue kimono loosely, had spiky orange hair, was slender, and had a cigarette hanging from his mouth. The other thug had a nose piercing and was bald. He wore faded brown pants with numerous holes in them and a leather vest that showed off most of his large chest and stomach. He had a tattoo of a woman in skimpy clothing on his left bicep and a large Ono war axe on his shoulder. The thug with the deeper voice said, "Who's this? I thought it was only the daughter and the grandson." As he inspected Hinata's body, the haughty thug licked his lips and said, "I don't know, but since Gato only wanted the daughter, we can have this one all to ourselves." Neither of the thugs saw Hinata's veins bulging because her bangs covered the sides of her face and her eyes were obscured by a shadow. The men's remarks about his mother and the girl, who was more sympathetic to his suffering than he was, caused Inari to start crying. "You two want to play, do you?" The two thugs would be killed 10 times over if a tone of voice had the power to kill. Hinata had never spoken in such a menacing tone to anyone before, and even she was taken aback when she heard the words come out of her mouth. Clearly the more intelligent of the two, the thug with the deep voice backed off. "Ooh, trying to act tough are we? Oh well, it'll just be more fun to break you later," said the other, who later shook off Hinata's menacing tone. With that, he lunged toward Hinata, his fist poised to knock her unconscious. Hinata looked up, telling the thug exactly what he had gotten himself into by looking him in the eyes. Hinata was standing on top of the haughty thug when he was slammed unconscious onto the floor a second later. When the other thug noticed Hinata's forehead protector glinting, he cursed her for not knowing she was a ninja. The other criminal fled in an attempt to get away. Tsunami happened to be walking home while he was running, and the thug grinned. "I get to enjoy myself later," I said. The thug ran up to Tsunami and attempted to swiftly lift her into his shoulder, but when he paused to punch her out, he was struck in the neck by a kunai. "Now why would a dirty low-life like yourself be running from the bridge master's house?" the Naruto clone asked rhetorically, standing on the man's back with chakra. On his way to alert Hinata, he had met Tsunami, who informed him that she had spotted 2 thugs with Inari on their way to the house. The Naruto clone made the decision to stay with Tsunami because he knew Hinata could handle herself against 2 simple thugs, just in case one of them escaped and tried to grab her on the way out. "I'm going to assume that you and your friend mentioned having some fun with Hinata later. Since you did that, I don't think I can let you go freely. Therefore, I'll give you a choice. You can either die right here, or worse, I could give you to Hinata when she arrives. You have a choice, but time is running out. She is currently about halfway here." When the thug looked back, he saw Hinata slowly crossing the small bridge that connected the island and Tazuna's house. As though responding to the murderous intent she exuded, the water at her sides rose, attempting to heighten her appearance of danger. The thug would have urinated in fear if he hadn't gone to the bathroom before all of this. The thug used the following line to try to get the Naruto clone to give him a pass. "Why you don't have the balls to kill me? You just a shelter little brat who's never killed before. Too bad your mama ain't around to help you at Euro." Naruto pushed harder on the kunai at the thug's throat, interrupting his taunt. "My mama hasn't been around for the last 13 years. Enjoy rotting in hell, you piece of filth." Naruto killed the thug instantly by slitting his throat after concluding his brief speech. When Hinata realized Naruto had slain the thug, she lost her temper. She had never killed anyone before, but she had no trouble seriously hurting people. She was frozen in place when she saw Naruto perform this action directly in front of her eyes. She had not anticipated the blonde bastard doing that. His piercing blue eyes, brimming with anguish and suffering, met her as he turned around. Before vanishing into smoke, the clone said, "We need you at the bridge. We're under attack and we need your eyes to see through the mist." Pulling the green-faced Tsunami away from the body and toward the house, Hinata swallowed the bile that was rising in her throat. When they arrived at the house, Inari welcomed them with a hug. Tsunami smiled weakly and leaned down to give her son a hug in return after Hinata was pulled away from the action. Hinata reminded Tsunami that the thug in the dining room needed to be restrained because he wouldn't be waking up for another 8 hours. Then she went to get her ninja supplies. Hinata put on her jacket again and walked out the door. "Where are you going now?" Inari asked as she ran up to her. As she walked out the door, Hinata explained, "I have to go back up my team because there's trouble at the bridge." "But what if you're killed?" "Then what?" Inari exclaimed, tears beginning to fall from his eyes. Knowing exactly what Inari feared, Hinata turned to face him. Heroes are heroes because they do the right thing no matter the odds. "My team is in trouble, so I'll be damned if I didn't try to help." Your village is in trouble, Inari. How are they ever going to get out of trouble if there's no heroes to guide them? She turned as soon as she was done and began running to the bridge to support her teammates. He left Inari with his thoughts once more. Sasuke and Naruto searched everywhere for the enemy, hoping Hinata would show up soon so they would have eyes that could see through the fog. The phony hunter Nin from before suddenly materialized in front of them. While idly looking for an opponent to attack, Sasuke made a quick series of hand gestures and lightning burst from his hands. As he considered a way to fasten the weight seal to the hunter Nin, Naruto pulled out a kunai with one attached. The hunter Nin remained silent, staring at the two genin blankly, as though they were merely dolls. Senbon needles dropped between its figures as it made a quick flick of its wrists. Sasuke said, Naruto, I'm going to engage the Nin in taijutsu. If you see an opening, take it to use your seal. Looking at the masked attacker the entire time, Naruto nodded as he recalled all of his clones, including the one that was sent to retrieve Hinata. Hinata is on her way, was written as his face darkened and he drew another kunai. As he and the hunter Nin stared at each other, Sasuke slowly nodded his head in comprehension. The two rushed forward, meeting halfway with Senbon meeting kunai, after a minute of tension between them and the clashing of their respective teachers in the background. In order to fight closely, the hunter Nin shifts their grip. After a few seconds, the two launched into a barrage of lethal spinning and slashing attacks. Avoiding a needle that was intended to pierce his abdomen, the hunter Nin's arm spasmed after Sasuke punched it. When they landed, the hunter Nin sprang back, gripping their arm and rapidly striking a few pressure points. After regaining control of their arm, the hunter Nin was ready to initiate a jutsu when a flurry of kunai emerged from the fog. The hunter Nin did their best to avoid and block the kunai, using their highly developed reflexes. The hunter Nin cut its arm while defending itself because it was blind to a kunai with a paper slip fastened to it. The weight seal on the paper was transferred to the hunter Nin during that millisecond of contact. The Nin attempted to leap away from the kunai while still following its instincts, but its weight was doubled. With Hinata's Byakugan in motion, Naruto and his two teammates emerged from the fog. Sasuke and Hinata went together to confront the hunter Nin. But as the hunter Nin repelled the two genin, it began to make one-handed signals. After the three completed the jutsu, the water in the bridge began to rise and freeze. Naruto was outside, watching as the water, which was now ice, eventually rose to form a dome of icy mirrors. Sasuke and Hinata were taken aback because they had never seen someone perform one-handed seals before and it was a rare sight. In order to appear as though it were a moving painting, the hunter Nin used this surprise to slip into one of the mirrors. After that, the masked ninja filled every mirror. Hinata attempted Juken striking one of the mirrors, while Sasuke attempted to shoot a fireball into it. They both came to nothing in the end. Naruto attempted to strike the ice mirrors with kunai that had explosion tags on them, but the mirrors remained unharmed. After that, the masked ninja began tossing senbon needles, which seemed to be coming from all sides. Sasuke used two kunai to defend himself, while Hinata used her Byakugan to take down as many as she could. When Naruto attempted to attach a weight seal to a mirror, the hunter Nin, who had momentarily left the mirrors to give Hinata and Sasuke a rest, grabbed him by the throat. In an effort to affix another weight seal to the hunter Nin, Naruto fought against it. Before the seal could be activated, the masked hunter grabbed it and froze it until it crumpled. Then, while holding Naruto, the Nin whirled around and threw the blonde directly into the bridge, creating a crater in the process. After that, the hunter Nin launched multiple senbon at Naruto. Naruto remained in the crater. Sasuke's eyes widened and he called out his friend's name but got no answer. A silent tear escaped from under the mask as the hunter Nin winced at how hurt Sasuke sounded. After witnessing the death of her teammate, Hinata became immobile and stopped breathing. Sasuke gripped his eyes in agony when Naruto failed to respond. When Hinata's shock subsided, she hurried to him and used her Byakugan to watch as chakra began to fill his eyes. When the hunter Nin opened his eyes, he saw two tomo in each of the Uchiha's blood-red eyes. The words, "You've killed the man that I think of as a brother. Now prepare to die," came out of Sasuke's angry voice. The hunter Nin turned back to their mirrors after feeling another tear slide down its cheek. Launching a more severe senbon assault. With ease, Sasuke left the senbon and began to watch them as though in slow motion. He only needed to get the rest of his body to catch up to his eye's new speed, but he could see that the hunter Nin was simply jumping from mirror to mirror at a speed that even a Junin couldn't comprehend, rather than being in multiple locations at once. Sasuke could see the hunter Nin flicker between the mirrors because of his Sharingan. and that flicker allowed it to follow its course. Sasuke readied his fireball jutsu after noticing a pattern in the Hunter Nin's movements. Recognizing the imminence of his attack, when Sasuke threw the fireball, it struck the top mirror and again had no effect. The Hunter Nin, on the other hand, had half of its pant leg burned off or singed, and its left leg was now burned. Hinata was astounded by her teammates' improved proficiency. Now he could deflect the senbon as well as she could, and he had even hit the enemy. To stop Sasuke from doing that again, though, the Hunter Nin progressively accelerated, and more senbon were evading their defenses. Senbon continued to penetrate their defenses for a few more minutes before coming to a halt. Tired from quickly deflecting so many senbon and from the pain of the senbon that had managed to get through, Sasuke and Hinata knelt. "I'm sorry, my friend," was the first words the Hunter Nin said during the battle after returning to his position in the mirror. When Sasuke recognized who it was, his eyes grew wide. As he re-emerged in every mirror, Haku felt another tear slide down his cheek. Confounded by the Hunter Nin's remarks, Hinata made herself get to her feet in preparation to block another senbon rain. Unbelieving that the ninja they were battling was actually Haku, Sasuke had continued to kneel on the ground. Not being able to see past them, each mirror launched about 100 senbon. Hinata deactivated her Byakugan and closed her eyes. She didn't want to see the hundreds of needles coming her way. Hinata opened her eyes to find Naruto struggling to stand due to the amount of senbon that was now inside him after a few seconds of still feeling no pain. The quantity of senbon in Sasuke and Hinata combined was doubled, with the remainder of the senbon being piled high on the ground. At the boy's achievement, the entire world froze in wonder. Haku couldn't believe how many people the blonde had taken down. As they watched their teammate begin to stand up straighter with his back to them, Sasuke and Hinata were unable to make any noise. Then he released a killing intent that was equally as powerful as the accompanying vile red chakra. The holes they made were left behind as the needles covering his body were forced out. Fearing the devastation this evil chakra could cause, the two Junin stopped off at Kakashi's battle with Zabuza. Was the seal broken? Please, for Kami's sake, don't let that happen. In an attempt to lessen the potential harm, Kakashi hurried to his Genin. Zabuza joined his opponent as he fled. He began to worry about Haku. He trailed his adversary to the origin of that dreadful chakra. Naruto's famous whiskers grew larger, his teeth became more pointed, and his blue eyes turned blood red as he turned to face Haku. For the second time that day, Hinata was afraid of the blonde. Where is this chakra coming from? Sasuke watched in horror and bewilderment. Naruto let out a low growl from his throat. A chill ran down Hinata's spine as she felt it vibrate through her bones. In an attempt to keep things from getting out of control, Haku prepared senbon needles. Naruto struck the mirror with his fist before he could toss the senbon, shattering it instantly and sending Haku flying out the back. Haku's mask broke in two as he collided with the bridge's side. The lower portion, which drops to the ground, reveals Haku with blood dripping from his mouth. Naruto fell to his knees and snarled at Haku as he hit the ground. Kakashi and Zabuza had just arrived, completely disregarding their earlier conflict. Zabuza knew Haku had no chance against Naruto after observing the expression in his eyes. Without allowing himself to think, Zabuza ran to Haku in defiance of all reason and philosophy. With an arm drawn for a punch, Naruto lunged toward Haku. Naruto became even more agitated when Sasuke yelled for him to stop, but all he could hear was the fox whispering in his ear. As he watched his killer come closer, Haku smiled sorrowfully. Hopefully, I was a useful tool. Zabuza, father. Naruto was awakened from his fury by the splash of blood across his face. Naruto regained consciousness and found himself looking into grief-stricken, agonized eyes. Naruto staggered backwards, removing his hand from the hole it had made, horrified by his actions. Unable to comprehend what had just transpired, Haku's eyes widened. Haku watched in disbelief as Zabuza's body collapsed into him, leaving a bloody hole in the middle of his chest. Zabuza said something he believed would never be spoken as he collapsed into Haku. I'm proud of you, Haku, Zabuza said with a smile as he exhaled his last breath, son. Zabuza lay in Haku's arms, seemingly still. Eyes expressing regret for their coldness, murderous behavior, use of Haku as a tool, and abandonment of him in this cruel world. His wrappings, with a faint smile beneath them. As Haku watched the man he thought of as his father pass away in his arms, rain began to fall, blending with the tears that were streaming down his face.
I will continue this story next part. Till then, we weeb offline.